Previously on the Project Umbrella podcast.
So all these years, when the best way of killing a zombie is to shoot them in the head or dislocate their spinal cord, all those things, no. If you're a large group of you, you could sing, and that attracts them, and they kind of sway in time with it.
Hi, I'm Redfield, and I wear an umbrella badge now.
There's absolutely no reason whatsoever why this guy at the end does have to be Chris.
Yeah.
You know, for the exact same reason the corporation doesn't have to be Umbrella.
I think if anybody looks at 7 and says it's not Resident Evil enough, needs to seriously sit down and rewatch Vendetta.
Yes.
And just ask yourself that question again.
Project Umbrella.
Hello and welcome to episode 45 of the Project Umbrella podcast, home of a veritable feast of biohazard knowledge, all of which is secretly and safely stored with the father and daughter team currently based in Salisbury. We've not heard from them for a while. I'm Nick, better known as Neptune. Let's see who's joining us today for the podcast. He's just like the Caped Crusader in every way, fighting crime, protecting the streets, all whilst driving a highly sophisticated Bat Ford Focus. It's Batman.
Hello.
Just like the real ultimate biological weapon, he is completely programmable and will do whatever he's told without question. Just ask his wife. It's Stars Tyrant.
Hello.
His Prime Minister has declared that everyone in her country are racists, so let's welcome that notorious Pakaha Irombi.
It's Pakeha, by the way.
Pakeha, thank you. And he's in a state of mourning now that Julia Voth is engaged and has better things to do with her life. It's George Trevor.
I saw that, congratulations.
What? Do I like Julia Voth? Okay.
Slightly. Coming on today's podcast, we are going to be skimming through the news before launching into a discussion all about Resident Evil 2. Unlike the first podcast we did, we've all played through a different version of the game, Claire A, Leon A, Claire B, Leon B, on different consoles, so we should be able to share our experiences with everyone and whether this game holds up, especially with the remake due sometime this decade. And of course, we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of Biohazard 2 being released in Japan. We then, of course, finish with an RE2 themed version of Neptune's Biohazard quiz. So let's start with the news. That's the news.
Has there been any?
There really hasn't, folks. The only bit of news which we were talking off air was the new Biohaze website has launched. We are scraping the barrel, a bit of Resident Evil news, but I suppose this is Resident Evil related news.
There is one, Nick, actually.
Go on.
Didn't RE7 hit 5 million copies at last?
5.1.
Overtaken Resident Evil 2, wasn't it? It's the third best-selling game in the series.
Well, yeah, Resident Evil 2, that number of 4.9 is only for the original PlayStation releases. It doesn't include the DualShock, it doesn't include any other platform releases.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously 7 is day and date, multiple platforms.
I mean,
which is the big issue.
Yeah.
That's like, there was this news about Monster Hunter's been Capcom's biggest release as an actual launch. It has, but it's still not their biggest title. Everyone's like, oh, it's the biggest title they've ever had because it's sold around 8 million copies or so. But technically, they're still their largest selling title until it passes that number is Resident Evil 5, because somewhere it's in the extent of over 10 million copies. We know that between all the releases, but we just don't have an exact figure because Capcom's never said exactly what it is. But there's so much on one platform, and then the PlayStation 4 release just recently sold really well, and yeah, and so it's still their largest title overall, but by pure single release, that's now Monster Hunter.
With George returning to the podcast, he's been involved in quite a lot of his own podcasts on Crimson Head Elder. You have some advertising space, George. Go for it.
Okay. For what? For the website or for my escorting agency? We did an interview with the Resident Evil 3 director, Kazuhiro Aoyama, and that was really popular. So yeah, we're trying to get away from the voice actors and maybe try and bring some more developers, and not just of Resident Evil, of maybe some of the other survival horror franchises. But it's quite sad. I mean, Nick, you'll know from being Silent Hill fan, and that's interesting because I'm listening back to the last podcast we did on Resident Evil 2. For some reason, the sales figures for Downpour, Silent Hill Downpour, you were discussing, I think, saying that more people bought Hannah Montana than Silent Hill Downpour. So I think it's quite sad in a way. Hannah Montana, the video game, sold more than Silent Hill Downpour. So yeah, so we're trying to kind of, I don't know, maybe infuse the Silent Hill and other sort of survival horror communities to get more proactive.
There we go. So anyone fancies more podcasts to download, they can listen to George Trevor, who clearly can pronounce Japanese names better than I can. So
anyone can. I think your two daughters can pronounce them better than you can.
I think that is the news. We're still waiting for Resident Evil 2 remake news, but we won't bore you with that. So with that in mind, we'll now move on to Resident Evil 2 Replayed.
A bizarre incident occurred in the outskirts of an American suburb called Raccoon City. It was later revealed that the terrible disaster had been caused by the T virus, a mutagenic toxin created by the international enterprise Umbrella Incorporated for use in bioweapon experiment. The Raccoon City Police Department's Special Stars Unit immediately began investigation in the affair. The case was apparently closed, thanks to the efforts of STARS members Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine. But the Umbrella Corporation's experiments were far from finished.
So, as I mentioned earlier, we have all dusted off our copies of Resident Evil 2 to celebrate its 20th anniversary. We've plugged in PlayStations and N64s, or even the Wii, I think, in one circumstance, and we've decided what disc and what version of the game to play. So to start things off, what I want to know is, how was everyone's experience replaying the old game? Was the replay factor still there? Did it hold up in today's general feel? How was it for you? Stars Tyrant, we'll start with you.
So the main game I focused on was the PlayStation 1 version of the DualShock, and I thought this time round I'll play it on PlayStation 3 emulation. Thought I'd give it a go on that because I've never done that before. The main scenario I focused on was Claire B. I've always said Leon A. Claire B is my favourite way through. I know there's canon issues and whatnot with that. I thought the game was still wonderful. I thought it was paced excellently, and I thought, even though I'm playing on a big screen through PlayStation 3 emulation, I didn't think it looked that bad, actually. It's probably the worst looking version of the game now, and even then it didn't look that bad. We'll get more into details later, but I loved it. I will forever love it. It's one of my favourite games of all time.
So overall it was an enjoyable experience picking up after all these years?
More than enjoyable, because I think with the way a lot of gaming is these days, and we've seen a lot of controversies in the last few months with microtransactions and all that, it was just nice to go back to something that is just so purely a video game and doesn't try to be anything different, except the fact that it was, at the time, like the production values and everything it introduced to gaming. Yeah, this was a year that Half-Life came out and Metal Gear Solid came out, and that 1998 is a year that I think gaming took a really positive turn to like dazzling production values and almost movie-style storytelling.
Batman?
Initially, I fired it up on the PS3 and got it on the PlayStation Store, and then I booted it up, and I thought I was playing Minecraft. It was so blocky.
It looks awful, doesn't it?
Oh,
Yeah,
it
looks appalling.
So after 2 minutes, I decided to bin the PS3, and I went on the attic and found my Wii and the component cables and tried it on a smaller size TV, and it was a lot better. Still a brilliant game. First sort of 20 minutes I really enjoyed because I'd not played it for a few years, and I just found myself forgetting things. At one point, I was stuck in the main main hall. I couldn't remember where to go because all the doors seemed to be locked, and I felt like I'd checked every room, and there was a lot more zombies in the police station than what I remembered. So it felt like for half an hour or so that I was having a proper old school back in 1998 time experience. And then once I found the keys and unlocked a few doors, I started to remember where things were. But yeah, it's still a brilliant game after all this time.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who experienced colouring issues. I played it just a standard PS version through the PlayStation 3 on a HD TV. It is disgusting in terms of its lighting on new televisions, and I didn't really notice it until I got into the R.P.D, and I was wandering around, especially on the first floor, and I was going, I don't remember it being this dark. But I persevered, and I've actually got to just where the dogs are in the basement, and when you go outside, I couldn't see anything. The dark lighting was all over the place, but I was quite well into the game at that point. And of course, there's no memory card on the PS3, is there? So you can't just go, I'll just play it on the PS2. So I quickly put the PS2 on, and the lighting, of course, was infinitely times better, and that was my mistake. Emulating it through the PS3, I just cannot recommend it on anything. And the only way to combat it was to put it on dynamic lighting mode on the TV, which is really only on my TV reserved for HDR stuff, and it artificially lit it to acceptable levels so you could actually see what the hell was going on. But yeah, I'm glad other people experienced it and took drastic steps. It just does not hold up through PS3 emulation. I declare A. So we'll get to that. George, what did you do? What was your experience, and did you enjoy it?
I wanted to play the N64 version, only to discover that I lent it to someone literally more than a decade ago. Someone who I haven't spoken to for like 7 or 8 years, so that's going to be another expensive purchase on eBay. So I played the GameCube version through the Wii, wondering whether using the composite cable would make it look any better. Because I'd had the same experience as John playing it on the PS3 store. It's pixelated beyond recognition. These were probably my least enjoyable playthroughs, very much so because I've been playing a lot of Resident Evil 3 recently, and I didn't realise just quite how superior a game I found Resident Evil 3, just with a little few improvements, which also looks a lot better. So it looked a bit rough in places, but you guys, what you've said is right. It's an absolute classic. It will never diminish over the years. A couple of things I particularly liked. It's just such a breath of fresh air to play a game as compared to a lot of recent modern games that doesn't hold your hand. It almost felt like an RPG in terms of finding items that you weren't sure how they would then interact with the environment. Do you place that in that hole or twist it around that, And just like John, there were a couple of places where I couldn't remember whether I needed to use the valve handle or the crank and where to go. So it's that fantastic thing that no matter how often we play it and how old it is, there's still those moments when you kind of feel like a noob again and you're confused and you're trying to investigate what's going on. It's fantastic.
Romby?
I was playing Leon 8, and I played on the Vita, which was a nice change because it meant I didn't have to it was the same digital version, but it looks perfectly fine on a handheld screen. So that was a nice change of pace. I had considered playing it on the PS3, but I'd seen a lot of the games, including those on a HD TV, and it's a pixelated, compressed mess, and even putting a smoothing mode on doesn't help because it's all pre-rendered backgrounds, so it makes very little difference. I think I've been relatively realistic about the whole series as it's aged anyway, and so the things that were glaringly obvious for problems had kind of stayed as I expected, and the things that were great about the game continue to stay great. I think it had been so long since I played it the first time I picked it up, I was like, oh my god, this is way harder than I remember. How did I can easily remember playing the same scenario in like an hour or so, like when I knew it inside out, and now I'm like, it took me a long time just to get to the R.P.D without making sure I didn't get chewed to bits. And overall, it is exactly as you've all been saying. It's these things that it doesn't handhold you. There is a challenge and a mystery and trying to remember everything. And yeah, I can't say anything else otherwise that you guys haven't said.
I think for me, I've always made no bones about the fact that it's never been my favourite game just because I came to it after Resident Evil 3. So I've never quite held it in the same regard as everyone else. I've loved it, but I've always had RE3. But playing it again, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Talking about surprises and things like that, I forgot how difficult lickers are, generally speaking, because you think, oh, there they are. You have to shoot down.
Yes.
But then you've got to get close to them without getting killed. And I think the first time I sat down and did the replay, I was on caution, I think, and I thought, oh, that's all right, lickers, they're not that bad. Dead. One shot, couple of slashes, gone. And I hadn't saved. That feeling of absolute annoyance that I hadn't saved. and there's no retry. No. It's back to the loading screen at the beginning. You're like, oh god. But that's great. That's what it should be like. And what was quite good, because I haven't played it for so long, I forgot which point is in scenario A and which point is in scenario B. So, for example, where you put the red jewels in the busts, I think it has the camera angle with that kind of glass dome, and the liquor falls down. And I was going in and going, oh, I remember this room, liquor falls down. But it doesn't in A. It only does it in B. But I was like, oh, crap. So I was like going in there, armed to the teeth with whatever I've got. And it just never, ever happened. But I was cautious every time I kept coming back in. I was like, it's going to come now, it's going to come. And it never did. It's surprises like that. And even the ones I knew about, like the liquor jumping through the witness protection room. Jesus, did I jump? Jeez.
That got me as well. I went in the other room first where it's on the ceiling, and I thought, oh, I'll get you bastard, so it doesn't jump through the glass. So I killed it, and then I went in the interview room about half an hour later, and another one came through the window. And I thought I just wasn't expecting it at all.
Oh, wow. So if you kill you get 2?
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't think you did.
Oh, fantastic. It's great that we all had the similar experiences, because, again, with the liquor, how many times have we replayed this game, and I completely jumped out my skin with the one. I was playing Leon A, and towards the end when you're in the lab, and the one that falls down from the vents, almost like an alien film. Yeah, and that got me. I mean, the other thing I loved about those green ones, they're more mutated ones, if you've ever tried running away from them, and if you get that angle where you can see the back of you running and you can see them chasing behind you, and they kind of launch through the air and swipe with their claws, and it makes that sound. And again, I mean, testament to the designers, compare it to how games look today and the production values that go into games today to make them as realistic as possible. And there are very few games that would still make me jump out like that.
I even find the idea that you can walk into a room and you can hear the breathing. It's like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit, there's lickers in this room. Oh fuck. It makes you instantly way more cautious. You're like, where are they? Which angle am I going to? They're in a corner. It's a really good bit of solid design.
I thought RE2 was a master at that. You have it with the dogs down in the basement as well. You hear them, and you don't know how many, about 4, I think, in the end. But you just hear the of the dogs walking, but you can't see them. And I think also you can hear the zombies in the corridors underneath the vacant factory. They're wandering around, but the camera angle means you can't see them, so you're kind of like creeping up to a corner. There's some of the naked zombies as well towards the end. You can hear them, but you can't see them. Yeah, it was certainly orderly. It was a very, very good game. What I thought we could probably do, because we've all played different versions, we could go through the main points. So starting with the street section and then the R.P.D. as to what people's personal experiences were during that in their particular versions. In particular, how the character dynamics, the voice acting is notoriously shoddy, but actually I think this is probably one of the better games. And I think the acting is actually, although it looks quite shoddy. I've never done Claire A. I'm always a Leon A person, but I thought, no, I'll try Claire A. I thought Claire acted beautifully throughout the game, and I felt that she came across as extremely genuine.
I think that's one of the reasons why Alison Court has been so endeared to by the community over the entire time that she'd been doing the voice. It's just because straight from get-go the character was such a strong presence. Her performance was great. That is exactly as you're saying, and she was consistent with that through all the games, no matter what. Which is why everyone was kind of, well, not everyone, but lots of people were frustrated when she didn't come back. So.
Well, I think in my experience, I found that you saw her in the maternal role, but at the same time, extremely determined. And so when making a lot of her radio calls to Leon, she was like, right, we're getting out of here. We're sorting this out. And then later in the labs, it was like, I've got a few things to sort out. Leon, go pick up Sherry, by the way. Do it yourself. It showed a bit of development throughout her time. And by the end, she was quite battle-hardened, but still had that overarching desire to be able to, want to be able to help Sherry. And I think that was testament, as I said, to Alison Court's performance. But I think it was well written as well. And
it's the writing as well.
Yeah, it doesn't get enough credit at times. People go, oh, it's crappy voice, B-movie kind of acting. And I think that's slightly unfairly put towards certainly this game.
That's probably a point I should have made earlier as well. Just the fact that it was really on that cusp. I mean, it's like this and Metal Gear Solid and a few of the other ones that really started to take the actual cinematic concept into a story arc. And I mean, it was the same with the way that this was written. They did it very differently than any other game had been written at Capcom at the time. And it's set a precedent, because once they, having this idea of flagship and having a writer and having input on a lot of the other titles coming in to create more kind of heavy-handed actual film-style narratives was a big push, and it helped this game be what it was. This game would not be as memorable if it wasn't for the character interactions, without the zapping system, without those sorts of elements.
I think what's part of that as well, with maybe going with the whole film production and the fact that it's lived so beloved in the hearts of so many fans and sort of various different characters, is the fact that the minor characters, it's surprising how much biography they're imbued with. Robert Kendo, it shocked me actually on the playthrough just how little he appears, and he's literally, just a couple of lines, he's there, then he's gone, and he's part of like almost video game history, isn't he? Yeah, other various characters, that have a lot of biography, and yeah.
You have to just think back as well, back to 1998. So obviously, you'd played through the first game, and that was like a fairly lengthy time to play through and finish it. And then you did that with Resident Evil 2, and obviously you pick your character at the beginning. And unless you knew about it, and bearing in mind these kind of things weren't widespread unless you read magazines, because the internet wasn't really that big back in the late 90s. So when you finish your game and you think, I've cracked it, I'm really happy, you get the invitation at the end to play it again.
From the other perspective, yeah.
And, at the time, I can't recall a game that had ever done that, and I was blown away by the fact that you were seeing the same events from a different perspective. The first time Claire used the radio and you were seeing the other side of the conversation, I was like, it was like one of the first times gaming really felt like it was taking that next step in terms of how to construct a narrative.
That's it, exactly, because I remember, I knew this, because I'd read magazines with information about it, but I remember the first weekend playing it, I was so obsessed I played through all 4 scenarios in the whole weekend. Like, me and my friend just sat there for the end, like, we finished school in the evening, I was like in my late high school years at that stage, and we just sat there and played Friday through Saturday through Sunday and just obsessed over it, and then played all the mini games and everything as well. And it was because it just was so well crafted. It was so massive. It was huge. Like, games just didn't do that, exactly as you said. Like, this did not do that at the time. It was a very uncommon thing. The only other thing I could think of at the time was, like, I remember Castlevania, something that had come out the year before, and when you finish the game, you actually realised, actually, no, it's not. It's only half the game, and the entire castle there's a mirror version, if you knew about it. And it's just like, wow, okay, that was huge as well. But, like, those sorts of things were not common. I mean, there was an uptake in the industry. Like, RPGs were really starting to take off in the Western areas, so they're kind of lengthy. Like, Final Fantasy VII had come out, and I remember lots of people spending a lot of time playing that. And I think it became that era of these very big event games that it was that far into the console generation, and it just was the right moment for the game as well.
I think the first time, and bearing in mind, like, the FMVs in the movies in the original game, were infamous in their awfulness. As much as I think everybody, the Resident Evil community enjoyed them, we never knew they weren't anything else other than terrible. And when Resident Evil 2 came along, I remember watching the intro for the first time. And obviously you couldn't watch these things on YouTube back then. So the first time you saw this was pretty much the first time you booted the game up. And I remember just thinking how well directed the opening movie was, when Leon and Claire arrive in town. But the way I felt watching, and I've said this so many times on so many episodes, but the Birkin versus Hunt sequence, the first time, and even now, I still think that sequence holds up now. Watch a good HD version, it's still magnificent. The music and everything about it's just wonderful. But at the time, in 1998, there was nothing like that, really.
So I completely agree. Honestly, I think even now, the age of the actual CG has kind of obviously diminished over time, but the actual storytelling it does, the visual storytelling it shows, the fact it flips back and forth on narrative, because obviously it shows you the truck driver, this is the opening anyway, so but it shows you the character perspective and sets up a scenario and creates an intrigue and separates the characters, and all that is it's so perfectly crafted. It holds up exceptionally well. And then all the other cutscenes, especially the Birkin one, oh my god, it's still, the music helps with the style, just the way it's crafted it's like a classic film. You enjoy it for the storytelling aspects. It still does an amazing job.
Look, just a point about the music going on, I'd also be curious to know just how the production levels of the music at the time fared to other video games, because to me it's got one of the best scores of any video game. It's just wonderful. know, the marshalling yard particularly, and it just goes hand in hand with the pre-rendered backgrounds that is an element of this game that just can never age.
I think musically, 1998 was again a bit of a turning point, because you've obviously got the Metal Gear Solid release, which had just incredibly good music. Resident Evil 2, I think, is one of the series' best. And, Square were doing things like with Parasite Eve. The music in Parasite Eve is just incredible. And again, that was a game that had like dazzling FMV production values.
I agree, yeah. It's, at that time, it was that late 97, early 98 really started to push what people wanted to be doing with CD soundtracks on those games.
I think what makes a lot of the... And this isn't leading into a remake rant. I'm sure we'll get there eventually. But
how many minutes in are we? I think we've done really well.
No, we've just said about how strong those cutscenes were in 1998. And that's why I just find it all the more disappointing. Just how they couldn't recreate the magic of these moments in Darkside. Mm. You look back through the Hunks team sequence in Darkside Chronicles, and it's so poor. There's just no drama.
The only version that's managed to invoke the original, I think, is the Outbreak opening cutscene, which I think is very well done.
Well, they had to do it almost from a completely different perspective, didn't they? By having that kind of mouse view, and then it helped that it had the awesome music in Outbreak.
Oh, yeah. The opening of Outbreak. I mean, that's just wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll start with the streets. I mean, generally, the 2A versions are very similar going into the streets.
Is it unusual that you're just literally thrown in? I mean, if you actually take each screen individually, it's got some of the most prevalent enemies than some of the latter stages that, I actually find the first few screens, when I first played the game anyway, I was like, what the fuck? You're just dropped on this street full of zombies straight away.
Well, it was such a common thing that I remember at the time when it came out. I don't know how you guys felt about the first time you played. You're watching this cutscene, and the cutscene ends, and you're just standing there, and you're like, it takes a little bit of time before you realise that the game started. And I remember people saying to me they didn't realise the game had started, and there's like fire, and they were, ooh, this looks cool. And then all of a sudden a zombie would just wander up and start gnawing on them. And they're like, oh shit, I'm actually playing? Oh crap, and then realise that was such a common thing to be said in the early days. Like, I remember that a lot.
It'd be really interesting to know if, firstly, they did that in any remake, but also how modern gamers would do, because they're so used to tutorials and training levels, to suddenly go, you're on, go. Even in Resident Evil 1, you kind of got a bit of a tutorial. You could explore the dining room at your own pace, get to grips with the controls. You only had one zombie. Lots of build-up before you had anything particularly challenging. But Resident Evil 2, it's bang. Right in your face. You've got about, 4 zombies surrounding you. Either fight or run. I recommend run.
Yeah. Well, you've got very little ammo,
zigzag. Yeah, there's a zigzag between them all. Which again is a sensible design. Like, it is hard, but it's a sensible design. Like, it gives you this opportunity once you realise you can go, okay, yeah, they're all kind of scattered and I can zigzag. I think the hardest bit is actually run by the gun shop. You carry in the corners, the 2, and if you misplace yourself, you can walk straight into one of them. And
just outside Kendo, yeah.
Yeah, because the camera angle changes from looking up the street to down the street.
This will probably be a good point, because I think me and George have been talking about it before. I think this is the first point where I felt that certainly the 180 spin was lacking in the controls, and I felt the so-called tank controls were very tanky, and it didn't help. Now, Sean, you may have some different views because you were playing DualShock version. I can only assume that you can use analog sticks in the DualShock version. Does that help?
No, because it's not true analog. It just basically mimics the D-pad controls, but you just use the stick to do it. So, you can't just, proportionally move it, and your character walk speed will increase. The walk speed remains until you press the run button. The turning rotation is as though you were just pressing left or right on the D-pad.
I had to deal with this problem on the Vita because it's the DualShock version as well, and so the sticks work that way, but then I realised it's not any better than using the D-pad, so I was doing the same thing and just using the D-pad.
It's a shame. I felt a bit disheartened at the beginning when I first started playing it, because I thought, I don't necessarily remember it being a bit better, but I think, after playing like Code Veronica and 3, you remember, especially Remake as well, it was slightly more fluid, and the controls were a bit clunky to get to go with, and I think the number of times I was hit by zombies trying to avoid at the beginning was more down to my lack of skill, less so.
Which version did you play then, Nick?
It's just a standard PS1 version.
So it wasn't the DualShock version?
Wasn't the DualShock, no. So
you had auto aim off by default?
Oh, I was going to come to aim, because I thought that would be helpful.
I was about to say that too, yeah.
You have to turn it off in the DualShock version by selecting Type C, I think.
I never had aim on, and I wasted a few ammos over the game.
I hate auto-aim. I always switch it off if I've got the choice.
I normally play it again without auto-aim, but I had to turn it on for this because it just the lack of that 180 spin really made it for the first time for me. Like I said, it was my least enjoyable of all my playthroughs of RE2. The tank controls really kind of felt emphasised by that lack, and I think again it may be evidence that we don't need a remake because with RE3, no major changes, but just that little tweak with the gameplay, and that's really all RE2 needed.
You guys have to think about it in the terms of 1998 as well. I mean, you had the original release, and then there was the Japanese version had the auto aim, but the US version didn't. I'm pretty sure it wasn't added to the director's cut. But if you skipped over the director's cut, 2 was the first time, that was the improvement. The auto aim in 2 was basically the 180 degree turn of 3, because people had said how hard, it had been to aim sometimes at things off screen. And so they went, okay, well, we'd added that into the Japanese version. We'll make sure it's added for this director's cut and 2. It basically what the equivalent of what ended up being the 180 turn for 3 was.
I've got to ask as well then, Nick, so were you playing the 50Hz version?
Yeah, it was just a standard UK
Ouch.
PS3, yeah.
Because Resident Evil 2 does play really badly on the UK version. Right. Controls are really sluggish.
Oh yeah, I did find that. I was disheartened at the begining of the game, but I got into the swing of things.
This is just bizarre because I played the PlayStation 1 emulated version on PS3 and I thought it looked alright on the TV I've got. I don't have a 4K one, I've just got a 1080p plasma, and I thought it looked alright. And I found the controls so tight. I mean, obviously you do miss the 180 degree turn, but I did find it really responsive, and I actually was impressed by how responsive it was. It's interesting how we've had different experiences.
Yeah, because what version would I've been playing in terms of 50 or 60 hertz if I'm just playing the GameCube version?
50.
So when I put in dead aim on PlayStation 2 and it gives me the option of 50 or 60.
Yeah, you pick 60, you'll be fine. You're playing the same as the rest of the world. But the GameCube re-releases, Resident Evil 0 and Remake, when they were releasing them, had 60 Hz options. 2, 3 and Code Veronica didn't.
I remember at the time I hadn't really had any experience of Resident Evil 3 at all when these came out on GameCube, and RE2 I'd briefly played on, because I'm not sure of the time scale between it coming out on N64, which was very, very late, and then coming out on GameCube, because I hadn't played it much. And I remember going at the time, I remember in the video game magazines, the furor and ire of fans that these were completely straight ports. They both came out on the same day, didn't they? 2 and 3 on GameCube, $19.99 each. Yeah, so quite a lot of money in the fact, just straight ports. That's interesting to know because I always wondered whether choosing 50 or 60 on Dead Aim makes a difference. And
60 is the only way to play.
So while playing 50 Hz, I had the same experience as Nick. The controls were really clunky.
If I was in your position, George, I would actually favour taking the graphical hit on the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 1 emulated version over it looking better, just because you'd have the proper game speed.
It'd be great to play that and see the difference. I'm definitely going to do that.
Because the emulated versions, the versions that are available on the PlayStation Store in the European regions are still just the US versions. They didn't even bother porting the PAL versions in the end. They just took the code and the copies of the US one and just put them on the PAL store for everyone to play. It's kind of...
Yeah, except the DualShock version, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the DualShock, which is the same as the US store. I think it's only the Japanese one that has the non-DualShock. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Sorry, that's not what I meant. The director's cut DualShock is PAL version on the...
Yeah, on the original, they released that as a PAL version.
Strange.
The other thing that's really telling, if people want to see the difference between the speeds and they have both copies, Gatling gun is the perfect example of how you...
It's so slow! Yeah, it's so slow!
For people who don't know, because everyone's obviously reacting, they know, but if you don't know, the US version, it's like... The UK version is like... It's so bad.
Running away from Cerberus in the PAL version is like a sluggish and entirely undramatic affair. Running away from them in the full speed version is actually like tense and scary.
Well, that's good from these podcasts just alone, finding out I'm definitely going to play the emulated versions.
TV setups aside, I mean, if you've got a Vita, play it on the Vita because it looks cracking on the Vita. Actually, it really pops. Actually, I think the image.
Yeah.
Just for our other listeners, the Vita is a PlayStation console.
PlayStation Vita handheld.
Yes, Google it. You'll see.
I'd really love to know anyone's experience if they've played the PC version, because I'm thinking that's another reason why we may not need a remake, because just from screenshots I've seen of RE2 and RE3 on PC, it looks amazing.
I used to take all my screenshots for the website years and years and years ago from the PC version, because it was such a clean...
Didn't they re-release the PC version about 10 years ago with full quality video? Full screen.
Yeah.
It was about 10 years ago they put it on a DVD, didn't they?
Yeah, quality as it was, because they haven't kept the original source material, so I think it was just the highest res version that they had available. And that's the same with the backgrounds. There's a big difference between the PC version, much like there is on the consoles, but very obvious. When they developed Resident Evil 3, they maintained a cache of the high-res artwork. And when I say high-res, I mean I think it was 640 by 480 as opposed to 320 by 240, which it was what they were output as, purely because they knew they were doing a PC and a Dreamcast version in 1999. It was already on the cards, so they kept those, and the PC version uses the same background assets, so the quality of the backgrounds is much higher, whereas Resident Evil 2, no matter which version is even the re-release version, the original backgrounds are just the same compressed 240 versions that has been on every version right through, and so the quality does dip. But the character models are really great, and the enemy models are really good. And everything that's not a background element is really sharp. But they create an added contrast between the backgrounds, which are really low quality, and the really high quality character models, which is a bit of a shame. Whereas 3 looks really good because they kind of do really mesh really well.
That's interesting. So I've got 2 folders of the RE2 screens and the RE3 screens, and the RE3 screens, which are from the Dreamcast, like you say, they're like 640 by 480, and they look considerably better.
They run exactly the same content that the Dreamcast and PC versions were done at the same time and based off the same thing and done by an internal Capcom team rather than being outsourced.
The character models look incredible. They're really sharp. They really jump out.
Yeah, and again, I think especially for 3, they planned that again, knowing that we're going to do a slightly higher res version as opposed to the ones in 2, which have had to be remade basically to increase their details.
Okay, so we're still about the streets. I just wondered, B scenario, how did everyone find the street section?
It's painfully short.
It's a bit shorter, isn't it?
It's just one street with no zombies on, and then you're at the station through the back door.
It was interesting when I totally forgot that back exit in the A scenario. And so when I got to the shed, I went through the door and regretted it. But there we go.
Oh, yeah, because no zombies attack.
Dun, dun. Really overly dramatic music.
Yeah, God knows what was going to come out. Oh, God, it's just a couple of zombos. But yeah, not too bad. It reminded me a bit like when you try to leave out through the main door in Resident Evil 1.
Oh, yeah.
But it was good, it's good.
Are you the only officer left in the building?
Who are you?
Claire Redfield. I'm looking for my brother Chris.
We lost contact with him over 10 days ago. Chris, Jill, Barry. Every last STARS team member has disappeared. We should have listened to them.
What happened?
About 2 months ago, there was this incident involving these zombie-like creatures in a mansion located in the outskirts of this city. Chris and the other STARS members discovered that Umbrella was behind everything, at the risk of their own lives, but no one believed them.
Are you okay?
Don't worry about me. Just rescue the survivors in the other rooms. Here, take this key card. You should be able to unlock the doors in the hall with this. Now go.
But...
Just go.
Okay. Just hang in there. I'll be back soon.
So I suppose the first point of difference then, if you like, with the R.P.D, and there's not no big differences between the A scenarios and the B scenarios in the streets, so, but with the R.P.D, everything starts to change. How was everyone's feelings returning back to the R.P.D? Did it still strike that chord of satisfaction? It really is not the most suitable place for a police station. I was thinking as I was playing along, let's just say it's a normal day in Raccoon City. You rock up to the R.P.D, you go, oh hi, I've got an appointment with Brian Irons. Oh yes, certainly sir. His office is on the first floor. Okay, how do I get there? Well, you can either go all the way through here, past all the offices, down the corridor, and then up the stairs, back round again, through the library, round there. Or you can risk your life and climb up that emergency ladder.
Well, I was going to say the other way is, I would say the shortest route to Iron's office, if you were at the reception in the bottom downstairs, where they would take you to the right doors through the other precinct area, take you through the detective's room, outside, through the fire escape, and back in upstairs into the hallway, and then out into the other hallway, and up and through the other hallway up to Irons' office. And yeah, it really isn't that well thought out.
It is ridiculous. I know there's a degree of, fantasy when it comes to these places, but I mean, really? I mean, he's going to have a lot of appointments.
Think about the hassle of taking someone from the interrogation room to the cells alone. So you're going to go out and around this long hallway, and then out down another hallway, and then through some offices, and then down another hallway, down some stairs, along some hallways, through a garage, through another hallway, and then we'll finally get to your cells. It is quite ridiculous.
But it was nice to be
iconic.
back. It was iconic, and it was nice to be back. And it's a totally different feel to the mansion. Familiar, but still very imposing. And
I think that was the core concept behind it. It has a hall, and there's a sprawl to it, and they were thinking it in those terms more than the actual realistic, believable aesthetic value of it.
I think what got me, because it was my first time on RE2, was the N64 version, was just coming through, and like you say, hearing that bell. And I can't put it into words. There must be a reason why, out of all the video games I've been playing since like 79, this sticks out. It's like burnt in my memory, and the experience and the feeling. I think it's just everything, the music, but most of all for me, looking up and seeing this expanse in front of me, and at the time being a big fan of RPGs, just the wonderment of which way to go, left, right, up and down. There's so much exploration, and you almost feel overwhelmed, and this real idea that there's this big like investigation ahead of you. And again, the fact they don't hold your hand, you've got no idea where to go, what to do first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as you say, although it is linear, if you stop and think about it, it is linear, but you still have to do quite a lot of backtracking.
The thing is, it's linear, but it still encourages a certain level of exploration, because you've got to work out these puzzles, you've got to unlock doors, and it gives you a slow progression. It's quite sensible in that way. It's different than the original game. The way that the routes are laid out in the mansion gives you sometimes a few options to go, if I get this key first, I can go to this door, and then you go to explore this area. You're playing the different characters, it changes that again. Whereas the RPD, even in the A scenarios, kind of follows more or less the same path. For a chunk of it, you solve puzzles in different orders in different ways, but realistically, your first goal is always to get to the STARS office, and then so on and so forth.
It's interesting you say linear, because that's always been my biggest criticisms of RE4, and particularly RE5, and I'd never really thought of it that way, but I can't deny it, because you're right, so it's factually it is. But the one thing that it does, I think, that hides the fact that it is that linear is in a similar way to Metroid and the Castlevania games, where you can actually see the other areas, but you can't quite reach them. With Metroid, you don't have that extra bonus. With RE, rather than a bonus, you're finding an item that then opens up other levels of exploration for you. But you can kind of tantalizingly sort of see those areas, or maybe not quite interact with them like the puzzle demands if you haven't got the right object.
Well, it's always been my thing that in theory you could go back to the very beginning if you wanted to. And I was trying to think, what's the last point you can actually do that in RE2? I don't know, I didn't test it, but I'm not sure how far you can get back to the RPD when you're in the sewers.
Doesn't let you know.
Does it not let you? I didn't test it. Once you get down with that big door where you see Birkin, I think, and then is that the end point?
I think so, because with Leon you're with Ada then, and with Claire you've got Sherry.
Yeah, and she's about to fall down the chute. I was thinking as I got to the lab, I thought, I wonder how far I could go back. And I quickly went back to the tram to see if I could go back. I couldn't go back then. I thought, okay. But I wondered how far you could get to the game and actually go back to the flaming wreckage. So, before we get on to differences between the scenarios in the RPD, I wondered if anyone had any interesting experiences in the RPD that they wanted to share. Any annoyances at the library puzzle, or the stupidity of the library puzzle. Quite why they have moving bookshelves, who knows?
I really enjoyed the first sort of 20 minutes. I played Leon B, and when I got to the police station, when you get to the back, you see the helicopter crash.
Yes. Yep.
And the fire starts, and what I always do on the B thing, the one thing I can always remember is the valve handle is on the shelf in the Eastern office. So I always go down the emergency stairs, get that, and then go up and put the fire out, and then obviously the tyrant comes in. When you get past him, you're in the corridor outside the chief's office with the helicopter wreckage. And in the B scenario, there's actually a few lickers in there, and one of them did it where it screeches and then flings itself across the room, and it took me down from green fine to red danger in one hit.
Yeah, they're bastards.
But I managed to limp away and get into the secretary's office, And then from there I went down to the main hall, and of course all the doors are electronically locked. So then I had to come back up via the ladder, and at that point I really was stuck. I was like, where the hell do I go? I've checked every room. And I went downstairs again, and there's about 6 zombies in the eastern office, and then you go out that door into the main corridor, and there's about 8 zombies out there, and I was like, shit. And it took me ages. I thought, where the hell do I go? And then I eventually remembered. I thought, it must be the helicopter crash. The dead cop must have a key on him. And I went back up there, and that exit is then blocked off from where the tyrant came through. So for about 10 minutes, I really was stumped. It was like playing the game again for the very first time. And then I remembered it's the storage room beyond the chief's office where you put the 2 red jewels. The key card is in there for the computer.
Oh, it is. It's on a box, isn't it? Yeah.
So once I got that and unlocked the main doors, then everything started to fall back into place then. But that first 20 minutes felt really good. It was like playing it again for the first time, because I really was stumped as to what to do.
Romby?
There was things I'd forgotten little bits about, like the library puzzle, and like generally I think the amazing thing that I realised is just Leon A especially was the scenario that I think most people probably played first. Of all of them, I think most people probably put Leon's disc in more than Claire, and knew it's always the first scenario. So large chunks of the very start were very much, and it also goes back to, I guess, the demo that came with the director's cut as well, which, while it's different, is still kind of that same progression of Streets to R.P.D. So the early stuff, the real early stuff, is so ingrained in my brain that I didn't feel like I missed a beat. I was just like, all right, cool. So go here, go talk to Marvin, go up here, and I get the jewels. I go past because Leon's got a lighter, and then I go upstairs and I can go to the Star's office and all this sort of stuff. All that was real progression, but the further I got in, I was like, oh, hang on, now where do I go here? Oh,
check the map and things like that.
Check the map, exactly. I know coming up eventually I'm going to have to do this, but what do I have to do first? So I had the same kind of thing. After a while, I was like, wow. And it was kind of funny, as I said before, I knew the game. At one point I knew, especially that scenario, inside out, that I could do it in an hour, the whole game. But, God, I don't even know how I managed that now, because I just was so many times just going, oh, hang on, Nick, I have to go do this first, and then...
I have to say that's quite unique to RE2, because I'm not sure you really get that in RE3.
It's a much more linear game in some respects. There are certain areas where it opens up like into a hub area, like I think about the City Hall area where you can go to the newspaper office or the restaurant. But for the most part, it's a progressive. You go to this area, then you go into this area. Then the idea that in the first half you're trying to get to the clock tower, and in the second half you're trying to escape. Whereas 2, especially the first times you play it, you probably just trying to work out where you need to go. That's the other part of it. There's no real obvious end point. It's not like, oh, you have to get anywhere. Until you get into the basement, you don't even know that you needed to get into the basement, that you needed to be talking to certain people or meeting certain people. It's just literally an exploring, trying to unlock doors, find clues, find ammunition, survive.
In the A scenario, you don't get until you get to Brian Iron's office. And that's the point. You go, this is the exit point. Then you're kind of building up to find all the stones to get the hell out of there. And then, but it takes a long time to get to that point. And for all that,
that's with Leon. It's more the basement, because you start going through the sewers, but it's the same concept. It changes depending on obviously which scenario you're in. But yeah, it takes a long time. You've pretty much explored a large chunk of the R.P.D. by the time you finally realise, oh, it's time to move on. But you kind of do it in the sense that you're just trying to slowly make your way through it. It's actually quite cleverly designed. But I have to say that about both the original games, and the paths and the mansion as well was similarly, they thought sensibly about it.
Stars Tyrant, anything that jumps out to you in the R.P.D. in your scenario?
Scenario B, as Claire, just mainly how overwhelmed I tended to get with zombies. I remember the bowgun being way more effective than it actually is. And there was times, like particularly a couple of the areas in the East Office, like the Blue Corridor, I actually got killed because I think I put the grenade launcher away and the pistol away and just tried to rely on the bowgun to save some ammo. And it was just, unless you get like a dead center shot on a zombie, it won't knock down. And I just got mullered, absolutely mullered. But just the joy of how great the Tyrant was. What an amazing mechanic to introduce to Scenario B. Just when you think you've got that scenario cracked, you think you know what you're doing, you're understanding that the items are going to be switched around a little bit, and then the game throws that at you. Just such a tense experience. And although sadly I can remember each of his points, the one where he, as Claire, when you're going on the 3rd floor balcony to get to the bell, what would you call it? The attic. When you're going back, he leaps up and grabs on the sort of railing and climbs up. That was a nice little jump that I'd kind of forgot that.
Oh, awesome. Before we get to George with his, I just wanted to say, you're all Resident Evil veterans, so you probably remembered the safe code in the detective thing, but I'd forgotten.
2236.
Yeah.
I swear I had that as my PIN number at one stage.
Isn't it random, or is that RE3 where it can be one of three?
Outbreak.
It does change in the N64 version, though, doesn't it?
I'm sure there's a version where it changes.
It's not 2236 in the N64. I might be wrong, listeners. I seem to think...
I think you're right. I think they changed a bunch of the things like that. It was in that era where Capcom would kind of dictate that, because it was like when they released Dino Crisis, and the Japanese and the US versions have completely different puzzle solutions for like codes and stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, because I'm sure I had an RE2 PlayStation guide, because those were in the days when I'd get stuck and have to go to the phone box at the end of the road and phone a line. You literally, that's one for the teenagers. And, I'm a 23-year-old man, and I'm speaking to some 12-year-old on the other end of the phone. Can you help me? I'm stuck in the R.P.D.
George, were you one of the young children that appeared on Games Master and spoke to Patrick Moore then?
I'm a bit younger than that. I go back to Dominic Diamond.
The reason I mentioned the code was that because I'd forgotten what it was, so I had to go and find the file. From then onwards, I thought, I'm going to properly go through the game, because I'd forgotten quite a lot of the files, and I thought I would go through it and read them methodically like I did in RE7. Absorbing as much information as possible. And I got a real sense of enjoyment about reading a lot of the files and all the doom and gloom that led up to it. And I think it remains a testament to the game that, there's one file that says, we should have listened to Chris and Stars and things like that. And even though they're not in it, their presence is there. And then, of course, when you go to the Stars office, you've got, some, callbacks. And the way the files are written and all the reports, and then you start digging a bit more with, a Brian Irons, he's a bit dodged, and then you read his dealings with Sherry's father, and then that of course plays in very well with Claire A. And
the world building at the time was amazing.
Wasn't it? Was brilliant, and if you paid attention and read through all the files as the game was going on, it really amplified the game up a notch.
It just gives you such a sense of dread, because what you were saying, is it the operation reports, the two, and you're just reading like the cop's last stand. I don't think I'd played video games before that really, and that's what got me about the George Trevor story in RE1. It was just really emotionally strong. You really sort of felt for these characters that were absolutely doomed, and it just feels you as you're almost retracing their footsteps. Just emphasises, maybe at a time when graphics were limited, it really emphasises that dread.
Yeah. So George, did you have any particular experiences in the R.P.D. that you wanted to share?
Well, I think the liquor was a little bit disappointing, kind of how iconic it is, and you remember it so well. And the first encounter with the liquors is all over. I think it's literally just sort of 2 gunshots and it's gone. But that's why for me, with the 2 gunshots, the first liquor you meet, but that's why the liquors later on in the game I really appreciated. Far, far more challenging. Like you say, it was quite randomised. They'd be right on top of you, and then they'd, swipe at your legs, and you'd have to point down and shoot them. And sometimes, occasionally, like with the hunters, they just decapitate you straight away. So, yeah, I found some aspects easy. Batman talks about the number of zombies in various rooms, almost too concentrated in various rooms, and then you go kind of periods of time where you felt a little bit unchallenged other than just, working out the puzzle.
The zombies were a lot easier, I thought. I was finding a lot of the time it would take between 1 and 3 gunshots with the pistol to knock them down. And they would bleed out straight away. They wouldn't even play dead and get up again.
Interestingly, in contrast to what Sean was saying, I remember the bowgun being absolutely diabolical. And of course, you picked 2 of them up in Claire's story. And I thought, I'll give it a try. I found it really, really effective. It was quite good, especially the spiders in the sewer.
And I'd just leave them.
The bowgun definitely works better against stuff like crows, the spiders.
Brilliant
than
against
it does against the zombies and stuff. I think that was the idea. I've always felt that Claire got the short end of the stick when it came to the weapons side.
Definitely.
While the grenade launcher is really good and it's got a great level of variety, it's just she's definitely much more handicapped than Leon. Leon gets the shotgun and the Magnum. But
she gets it so early on in the game, and that's the thing. You are quite well equipped quite early on. Pistol, bowgun, grenade launcher, and that kind of stays your main inventory as you go through the game, unless you want to pick up the submachine gun.
I always used to leave the additional stuff in the locker for Claire when I would play Leon A, Claire B.
Yeah.
And
Same.
It's Claire and Claire A.
It does rob Scenario B of all its difficulty, though, if you leave at the side pack and
it really does.
The machine gun.
So, one of the distinguishing points, obviously, in the R.P.D. is we've got Sherry versus Ada. If we start with the kind of Leon element, how did everyone find their interactions with Ada? Was that still as believable as everyone remembers?
Well, I think it's a far more interesting relationship and interaction Leon and Ada rather than Claire and Sherry. I mean, that might depend on the gamer, where they're coming from, but I enjoyed particularly the voice acting of Sally Cahill. She did Ada very, very well. There's one scene where Leon, just before you take over as Ada, and he says, I didn't actually get a chance to introduce myself. I'm Leon, the R.P.D, Leon S. Kennedy. And Ada's character model just kind of shrugs. She doesn't say anything. Just shrugs her shoulder like, so fucking what?
Which is great. It is a great moment. I saw that as well, and I was just like, wow. But this goes back to what we were talking about characterization. They had these fully formed ideas of who these characters were, and they knew that Ada was a no-nonsense person who was out for what she wanted and didn't give a shit about other people, basically. And that's the point of the character arc, is that later on when she has these comments about redeeming herself and all this sort of stuff, it kind of is to play off against those cold moments where she was quite standoffish with them and all that sort of stuff. I think it's really clever, honestly. For it to come across so clearly with the character animation of the time is pretty damn impressive.
And it's nice to see Leon so young and naive again. I'm a police officer, I must protect you, we're a team and all this crap.
So normal. Not his James Bond-esque.
I was going to say, riding motorcycles, shooting Cerberus on a New York highway.
Killing civilians.
I
tell you what though, this is obviously pre-Ada's fight training though. I was watching the scene where her and Annette have that cat fight and she bitch slaps her over the fence. It's completely different to the fight she has with Svetlana in Damnation.
Well, you say that, John, but it's a good thing we've got a remake coming along the way.
Here we go. Yeah, it'll turn into some massive fight now, and then she'll pull out the lipstick rocket launcher. Yeah.
God. I tell you what I noticed, some of the zapping stuff doesn't match up, because I always assumed when you play as Claire and you meet Sherry outside the police station and she has like her little side mission where she goes into the chemical plant to get the key. I always assume that's the point where she bumps into Ada and drops the pendant, but that doesn't actually match when you take the radio conversations into account.
Oh, that's fudged a little bit. The timing doesn't also kind of work out when you actually think about it in some of the cases.
When Claire radios Leon to say she's found the girl, that's when Leon's just pushed Ada up into the ventilation shaft, but Sherry and Claire are in the chief's office at that time.
In that gallery, right. Yeah.
And then it's later on when Sherry goes into the chemical plant, so it doesn't quite match up in that regard.
That's only in Claire A, Leon B, isn't it? Sherry doesn't meet Ada in Leon A, Claire B.
No, she doesn't have a pendant on.
The whole story arc with Claire and Sherry, which has become the only pure canon parts, because obviously it relied on Sherry's character in the later games, is from Claire A, that whole thing with the vaccine and all that sort of stuff.
Rob, you're more likely to know. At the time when Ada Wong was kind of announced as a character, was there a degree of excitement within the community at that point that's kind of directly linking in with the first game? Or...
Yeah, there was a lot of speculation leading into it, unsurprisingly. It was one of those things, because obviously they had announced it and the demo came out, and you get the hint of her at the end of that original demo that was with the director's cut. And so we all kind of knew, and then the actual press reports all started saying that this was the character and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was, but it was actually kind of a short-lived thing, because that only came out a few months before the game launched.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So there was a lot of speculation in a very short frame of time, and of course the community was very, as it still is, can be quite rabid about small details. The problem was there was a lot of stuff going on. I mean, you had this whole change from 1.5 to 2, and not all the community really understood, especially at that time. The information it's kind of weird. It takes a long time for sort of that information to get through, and it didn't help that Capcom had there was a period of time between, I think, around the E3 for a few months where internally, obviously, the development had completely switched from 1.5 to the new version. But Capcom had to publicize the game was still coming and had delayed it and all this sort of stuff. So there's infamously, like if you go back and look at the E3 reels, they had stuff from both versions of the game in the reel because they needed to flesh out the content. So there's scenes of Leon that's still relevant to 1.5, and the Claire stuff's still relatively new because she's the new character that they had changed in, and so they added her stuff. But the Leon stuff, in order to flesh that out, there's still a few scenes from 1.5 in there. And that was the same with the kind of like the marketing and publicity up for a little while in the middle. So people were like, oh, what's this? Why all these changes? The character's been changed from the one that was originally announced, and the screens looked different than the one. So there was a lot of conversation around that too. So, and that was still continuing on right up until the game released, even after the demo had come out.
Interesting. Yeah. Thanks for that, Rob. It's always useful to know. I would say, just a kind of final point, in terms of the R.P.D, I like the fact that there was quite a few kind of optional things you didn't necessarily have to do, such as the developing of the photographs. That was totally optional, but I like that. As I said, it kind of fleshed out the background story, and you got that kind of hint of the G creature in the test tubes and things like that. And also the use of the cord. Where you put the cord, my memory wasn't good, because I chose it one the closest that I was at that point, so the one by the steps going down to the basement.
Which is the sensible one to do, because it's the one that you backtrack the most.
That was my line of thinking, but I'd imagine, does that affect... Is that part of the zapping system as well with B?
Yeah, it's the first time you go in the library after you've done the puzzle in there.
All the crows come through.
That the cord malfunctions and all the shutters open and the zombies pour in.
Oh, there we go. That's cool. I thought I chose the right one. But looking at kind of Sherry and Claire's relationship, but also you want to bring in Brian Irons' role into that. I don't know. I mean, he's weird at the end of the day, and it's a total change of pace, and you're kind of in the R.P.D, and you've kind of got used to it by now. You've kind of accepted it's stupid in terms of its layout, and then you eventually squeeze past like
we haven't even touched on the bathroom issue.
The lack of bathroom, the lack of bathroom. You squeeze past the kind of flaming helicopter, then you eventually end up in a Brian Irons' office, and then you see tigers and birds and with all the stuffed animals. And you're like, what?
It's a great little tie in the way that, that's how he's spending all the money and kickbacks he's getting from Umbrella, and, adds another layer of depth to the character, and the fact that, these ornamental, these animals are, actually ones that he stuffed himself. And
yes, so that makes it creepy, but then it also ties it into the whole R.P.D, and you go, actually, this kind of now makes a bit more sense by doing that. Because you don't get that in the B scenario.
The Secretary Diaries highlight it as well. When he goes spare at her messing about with some of the items, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I thought you were another one of those zombies.
Are you Chief Irons?
Yes, that's me. And just who are you? No, don't bother telling me. It makes no difference. You'll end up just like all the others. That's the mayor's daughter. I was told to look after her, but I failed miserably. Just look at her. She was a true beauty, her skin nothing short of perfection. But it will soon putrefy, and she will turn into a zombie within the hour, like all the others.
There must be some way to stop it.
In a manner of speaking, there is. Either by putting a bullet through her brain, or by decapitating her completely. And to think that taxidermy used to be my hobby. But no longer. Please, I'd really like to be alone now.
Because in Leon A, do you meet Brian?
No,
Leon
doesn't
meet Brian at all.
Leon A, you don't even have to go in his office. In Leon B, you have to, because the crank's in the back room. But
Crank's on the back, yeah. It's all optional, isn't it?
Yeah, because you go through Ben and you have the baby G thing through Ben. Comes out of him as opposed to...
Yeah, that's why you don't have to go through that, and then you go through the sewers rather than through the torture dungeon.
Yeah, it was interesting, is it? Because, you see the fact that the mayor's daughter is lying provocatively, albeit dead, on his desk, and even though the pixelation is terrible, you can see the pain in her eyes.
And I just remember the very first time I saw that scene, and just the horrific kind of sort of suggestion that what's he been up to before or after you left that room.
Well, but then you see all the stuffed tigers and whatnot, you think, is he going to stuff her?
In more ways than one, yeah.
The original's a little bit more subtle again than Darkseid, because in Darkseid he just comes out and says it, doesn't he? Whereas in the original there's a really nice line in his diary about how she'll be forever frozen in a position he chooses for her. It's really creepy.
That's a good comparison between the two, the subtleness of the first one, actually. You're absolutely right. Compared with Darkseid Chronicles, yeah.
He is bad and whatnot, but he has genuine motive going, they've just messed it all up, Umbrella, why have they done this? They've ruined my life, I don't care about anyone else, blah, blah, blah. And he said, you read the diary, he call his extracts, but...
The facts you get about him. I remember at the time, in Claire's scenario, you get the facts that Chris has had some investigations done by a private investigator, hasn't he? Mm-hmm. And it mentions rape and things like that, and I remember at the time. I mean, God, I could only have been a young teenager, thinking that's quite a mature turn, even for this series, which is like gory and...
It's quite a mature turn even in gaming at the time. That wasn't a common... These days, it matured storytelling is a thing, but at the time it was not.
Yeah. Because they could have made him out to be a murderer or a thief or something, but I remember I was quite shocked at the nature of this physical attack that he had committed, yeah. I'm sure there must have been specific conversations about that at the time, and the decision, I imagine, would have been made just to make the character really that extra bit more evil. Or...
The funny thing is, just recently, I remember there's been a translated interview from mid-98 or something, talking to both Sugimura and Kaya about the development of the game, and they were talking literally about why they decided to make him crazy. Like, they just decided to go all out there on being a weirdo. Like, they just thought that he has these weird rituals, and he's very malicious, and it's a really good interview, actually.
Yes.
And they're just talking about why he would do it, and he's kind of, the insanity of him, because they got asked specifically about how he has quite a strong personality. They obviously did spend a lot of thought in it.
They did. It's a nuanced performance. So I like Claire's kind of easy chief. It's not going to rub. He's gone. And then, of course, you're properly then introduced to Birkin at that point, and what he plans to do. And it does take a turn for the worst when it comes to what Birkin is planning on doing to Sherry. And Claire works out very quickly. Impregnation of an embryo.
Very quickly, that actually came up when I once interviewed Lisa Jai, who played Sherry, and she was a child at the time, and she said they were actually having to have these conversations with her about, I wondered how much depth they went into, and she said, they were telling her about this impregnation theme, and again, that just goes in with quite an adult, and
it is.
Yeah.
And it's very different. Resident Evil's never kind of quite been like that. You've never seen something kind of burst out of someone at that time. So,
I presume that must have been very much inspired by Alien, because there's quite a few references to Alien, isn't there?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest strength on that script. There's a couple other ones, but that's probably the biggest.
Okay, so I suppose that kind of concludes the R.P.D. Unless anyone has any kind of final thoughts they wanted to bring to our attention.
I just obviously the police have all been wiped out, and it's just the stories the individual rooms tell. Like when you go in the briefing room and you can see all the chairs laid out, and there's like a chalkboard with like the remnants of a battle plan drawn up, and you read the reports of how all the officers died. And
they're really good storytelling, yeah.
Yeah, and you said the characters from the first game, even though none of them are in it, which I think was an excellent decision, but like you said, the presence of them is still there through like the Stars team picture on the wall and stuff like that.
And the other people talk about them, Marvin says that they didn't listen to them, that they warned them, and
I was just going to say there's little subtle things as well, like, for the investigators out there, like you go around every single bookcase in the library and it'll say none of these books are useful, none of these books are useful, and then you'll go to one really obscure camera angle in the corner and just one row of books, it'll say like all these books are about Umbrella. Little hidden things like that, yeah.
I don't think I've got that. Oh, wow.
A nice little Easter egg if you've not been aware all these years, because I think I only found out about it when we did the series playthrough 5 years ago. But there's a little box next to Chris's desk, and in that box is the emblems and the Doom books from the mansion.
Yeah,
really
and
cool.
The pesticide thing that you use on Plant 42.
Yeah, so they did bring some evidence back with them.
I'm quite sure how we would have got those books out, but there we go. Yeah, I remember playing through it just as a final thing. The wife was kind of sitting watching, swearing at the television, going, "What on earth is this?" A highly pixelated picture. I said, "No, this is the best bit." So I just came up to the liquor bit. I was getting very excited. I was like, "Watch! I'm going to round the corner, and you can see it obviously crawling on the window.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
great little horror technique.
And she was like, "Well, what is it?" And I was like, "Did you see it?" She goes, "It was nothing." I said, "Not nothing." Come on. And they open the door, and you get that unique camera angle through that door for only that time. The first time you go through it.
Through the window, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely brilliant. And I was like, "You only get it here." She's like, "So?" I was like, "No, it's quality." I was getting all very excited.
One of the things that, I know, John, you've talked about this a lot over the years, and you just mentioned it with the library there, is the missing details that you don't get anymore. Like, if you do go into the Stars office and you examine every desk, you just get like a little bit of description. So like Barry's desk, whichever character you are muses that the person must be a member of the NRA and things that. And it's just nice to have those details. Either Chris Redfield Marksman trophy on the shelf.
I was disappointed there was no first aid spray in Rebecca's rucksack on the side. I was convinced that there was.
I thought there was as well. I'm assuming that must be RE3. Because there definitely is in one version.
Is there? Okay, so it wasn't me just losing my mind.
R3 would make sense too, because if, say, Jill took it, then it wouldn't be there in Resident Evil 2.
Yeah.
No.
Every time I go in the STARS office, I always think, oh, Jill unlocked this door about 24 hours ago. Because it's pretty much the only thing that works, in terms of doors being locked and unlocked and whatnot.
That's true, because I knew the fax was coming, and I couldn't remember when, so I kept kind of in and out, and I was like, oh, come now, and it just didn't, and I was like, what? And I couldn't remember what I needed to do in order to trigger that little cutscene.
Did anyone fall for that jump scare in the kennel with the dogs?
No,
I always know it's there, so I never do it.
Yeah.
Well, you get the red herb off the shelf, and they break free.
They go free, yeah.
Where was that?
In the kennels, there's 2 dogs in there. When you walk past the kennel, they'll jump against the door and give you a scare. But if you actually pick up the herb off the shelf, I think it's a red herb, they break out of the cells and attack you.
Anyway, yeah.
I don't have the cells in Claire.
No, you don't. Yeah.
You don't go that way.
Because you have to wait for the police van to be moved, don't you?
Yeah. The thing, again, I forgot which scenario does what, so when I was in the garage part, you could see that the van needed moving, but nothing was happening, and I sort of thought I'd done something wrong, but I hadn't, that kind of thing.
I think you can go to it later on when the van has been moved, but you have to purposely backtrack to go and explore. I think that's the case.
Ada! What was that all about? Running off like that was reckless and stupid. Those zombies are everywhere, not to mention that thing that got Ben.
I was there, Leon. I know.
Look, Ada, as an officer, it's my job to look out for you. But we're not going to get through this alive if we don't work together, okay?
All right. We'll do this your way for now.
So we now move into the sewers, which probably is the most disappointing part of the game, but that's relative, because I think the overall game still remains extremely strong. And, what's a Resident Evil game without a sewer section, in my opinion? I would be interested to know what everyone thought of this, because the scenery's not quite as diverse as it was before. The enemies aren't as particularly as exciting.
I personally blame the redevelopment from 1.5 to 2 for that, because they obviously had a sewer section in mind originally, and they knew that it padded out the game, and then they had to redesign a new sewer system and obviously spend a large amount of time redoing the R.P.D, because we know that they reused and repurposed some of the assets for the lab sections, so they obviously had focus on certain areas, and I think that's why the sewers kind of, with the bit that they didn't focus as much on variety, was just get it done. And
get it done, yeah. It just didn't hold up overall compared to the other kind of main areas, in my opinion.
I agree, but to a certain extent it was quite challenging, for the scenario designers, because you're going from one of the most iconic environments, buildings in video game history, and, contextually to fit with the narrative, where are you going to go? You are going to, I think it's an idea, survival horror game and matching going down in RE1 into the lower levels. You're going to go down. I think it's a good idea to go down into the sewers. I think in environment it works well, but for the design, maybe, at the time they couldn't quite give it that extra. Whereas, in the R.P.D, you've got all the Brian Irons, his weird and freaked out ornaments, but yeah.
At the end of the day, it is just a sewer.
Yeah. I do think it has the intrigue though, because that's the first time you find all the bodies of Hunk's team and it just started to build up a bit of mystery.
There is also a lot of files leading in and out around the sewer entrance and how it was being used, which also sets up a good understanding of what the sewers are kind of being used for, which I really like, and then obviously it leads you to exactly that same thing where it connects between obviously parts of the city, in this case the R.P.D, and the labs. So
I would say, of course, you meet Annette for the first time, and then that triggers the cool cutscene. It strikes me that it gives you the false impression that you're close to Birkin's lab geographically at this point, because of, you see how he was killed and mutated and whatnot, and then takes out the Alpha team relatively quickly. But there's a big gap geographically between where they are in Birkin's lab on the outskirts of town and the sewers, which we are under downtown R.P.D. And that's always been a slight flaw of Hunk's scenario and story as to where it takes place.
It's been a bit of a flaw, realistically, in the design of the actual area too, because if you think logically, especially in the B game, so you arrive at the back of the R.P.D and there's shops on the street, and there's a street, and then there's a big backyard of the car park area, and then if you take where Leon exits the tunnels underneath the kennels at the back of the R.P.D and the short distance to the tunnel, which connects to the side areas, which leads to the area that both Ada and Sherry can get access to, and you get above ground, you realise this geographically doesn't even match. It's not long enough, it's not far enough away. And then that was further complicated by Resident Evil 3 and the way that the map is designed there too, where you see how the street layouts go on the map there. So So it's very compressed into what would obviously supposed to be a much bigger distance, and those things don't match up either.
No.
So it's a very similar problem.
No. There we go. That was just a kind of a thought that I had. But of course, in the sewers, first time you get to play as your other character in the A scenario, that's always a challenge with Sherry, and you just hope you get through it. It's not particularly difficult, I didn't think, but it's annoying.
Can someone remind me which one? This is the later bit, not the first time with the yard bit and the boxes, but the later one when you get to the other bit of the sewers with the tunnel and you have to turn the fan on with the cockroaches. Which one is the one with Sherry? Is it A or B, Claire?
That'll be Claire here.
It's Claire A. All right. That is the worst part of the game. Hands down, worst part. I remember 3 times I was trying to do a no-save run on Claire A, and I got killed there every time.
It's
if
annoying.
you hit one of them, they just swarm, and Sherry has no health, and you just die.
I don't think you need to turn off the fan, though, at that point, because there's 2 tunnels you go through.
Yeah, I think it's just you go through up a ladder, run through a straight tunnel, and back down another ladder.
It's where she falls in the garbage dump, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And so does Claire A, of course. I should have thought about that.
That's just quite bad level design, because when you play as Sherry running from the zombies, I don't think they can physically harm you.
They can.
They can vomit on you, but they can't grab you.
Yeah, they can't grab you. Yeah, and I think my least favourite sections are the very frustrating puzzle that you have to solve as Sherry. I mean, just the character model trying to desperately climb up those steps so just a bit too high. To its credit, the character model is quite realistic, but that's when I think the only point of the game it just becomes a little tedious.
I'd agree entirely. And also, I found this could be, again, due to the emulation. Well, it worked out, how to do it. The puzzle just simply wouldn't work. I couldn't push all the boxes in, even though there was a gap. There's only a certain way you can do it. And so I pushed one of the boxes to the end of the wall, and then I wanted to push the last one in, and it wouldn't let me.
You've got to go out the room and start all over again.
So I had to start all over again. Instead of doing like the left box first, I did the right box first or something like that. Then it fit in. But I couldn't jump down the other side to push it out and then back in again. It was already fixed in a predetermined place. And when I was looking at it graphically, it would still fit. Push it in. Why wouldn't it go? So I didn't know what was going on there. But yeah, you're right. It's annoying.
With Sherry, it is easily my second least favourite box puzzle of the entire franchise.
I think I know the first one, the Neptune level.
I thought it was Zero. That's got a nice...
No, Zero is the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
The one near the end of the game with the gate switches, and it's just... It's not hard, it's just monotonous.
Yeah.
It's just painful.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to do it here. Oh, the gate. Can't move the gate. Oh, turn this way.
There's another bad one in this game, in the warehouse at the end, where you've got to push the crate down the lift and then move it along so you get to the power room. I always get a bit stuck there. It's just bad camera angles.
It's a shame because you wonder at the time what the developers were thinking, the designers were thinking, what does this add to the game? Because I always get that experience in the remake, and 1 when you're just shoving, to gain access to the Neptune area, just shoving the throwing, you're just hefting around these boxes, and it's a shame it breaks up the action. It's very jarring, takes you out of the atmosphere.
In the original, it was kind of forgiving because it just ended up like being another puzzle, and it felt, I don't know what it is about the original one. The thing that's most annoying is having to push that one box all the way down the one long hallway.
Yeah.
But generally, it just felt like another puzzle. But yeah, I don't know what it is about it, and the fact they continue to do it. It always reminds me of the old Tomb Raider games, and they're all block puzzles, because you would always everything was made of squares, and you'd pull something over and push it, and just tedious, and it just wrecks the flow of the game and slows everything down, and it's one of the few things that I can definitely say over time I've not missed them removing, over time.
So Leon players, what was Ada's involvement like in the sewers? We had the dramatic moment where Leon's shot.
Well, she just sort of says, he's not dead, and takes off.
I always thought this was the defining moment of the Leon-Ada relationship in the sewers, of all places.
Until near the end, it's very one-sided. It's all very much Leon trying to protect her and look out for her and taking a bullet, and it's very one-sided. It's interesting because we get all that reveal. I mean, from the cutscene is with Ada and it it's the crux of that story going forwards, and yet Leon's not even a part of it. That's the funny part.
It's another nice little example of how the zapping system works in that respect. From where Ada knocks her into the water, and then when you come down as Claire, you see her fishing herself out of the water. And which Claire scenario is it? You get the unique cutscene that you don't get in any Leon scenario, where Claire comes across Leon after he's been shot.
It's Claire B.
Claire B. Yeah, you don't get that in any of the Leon scenario.
Paul Haddad's acting in that scene is hilariously bad, though. It's just like, Ada went after the sniper. The sniper.
Oh dear.
Not a lot really happens in the sewers in the B scenario. If you've already killed the crocodile, there's just a few spiders in there and that's about it.
I was going to
It's,
say
it's the same puzzle, exactly the same.
I was going to say the crocodile though is a quality moment.
Before you get onto that, I just said the only neat change in scenario B is you can go to the other character's save room and raid the other thing as well. It makes scenario B so much easier. But yeah, the crocodile. How many people know you can kill the crocodile without the or make it run away without the cylinder?
I use this.
It knocks the wall down and runs away.
Does it?
That's the way, yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
If you do it in the A scenario, it still comes back for the B scenario, I'm pretty sure.
Do you have to kill it with the cylinder then?
I think you have to then. I don't think you can kill it any other way. I don't think, because it doesn't run off again. I think you have to blow it up or get killed. That's it. It keeps going forward until you run out of space.
Clearly, Leon and Claire aren't as skilled with their weaponry as Ark Thompson is, who could take out 2.
Well, let's be fair, we can't really speak for Claire so much, but Leon's still a rookie at this stage. I haven't quite got his skills up yet. Leon now would take out about 7 while doing cartwheels through the air.
Well, I was just going to say, I can't wait for the remake to do this sequence where it'll actually be a quick time event scene where Leon takes aim with his pistol and says, "Smile, you son of a bitch," as he pulls the trigger.
So he'll pick up a trash can and go surfing down it.
That was snappy.
Oh my god.
It's really interesting thinking back to the marketing materials. They actually hyped up this giant beast. In the marketing materials, there's always a screenshot of it in the sewer part.
It is a great set piece.
It's so blatant. It's just like, yes, we know this is ripped off. We don't care. It's awesome. You're going to blow the crap out of this. It's going to pick up a tank and you're going to blow its head off. It's
visually really impressive for the time.
Oh, yeah. I think that's why they showcased it. That's exactly where I was going to go with that. So just the fact that this giant creature is coming at you.
As you said, some of the files in the sewers were quite interesting, and you learn more about the relationship between Umbrella and Birkin and the nefarious connections between them.
I was going to say, it's not even just that, but between that and some of the stuff in the R.P.D. early on as well, you really do start to get the idea of how much Umbrella had its fingers in all the pies, like how much control it had in the city and the influence it could wrought with certain people in order to have access to whatever it wanted. It is a really well fleshed out, it starts to really open up the idea of how much they're in control and how much, no wonder that the Stars members weren't listened to and all this sort of stuff.
Now, of course, at the beginning of it, A scenario, people would have been fighting against Baby G, whereas in scenario B, you'd have had Birkin G1 with a metal pole. How did it...
Oh, I didn't even play that, and I'm just thinking about being smashed over the head with that pole.
Whatever floats your boat there, Rob, but there we go. I went all gun-ho with the submachine guns, albeit in 50 frames.
But he actually dies in real time. The boss battle's over and he wanders over to the thing and falls off, but it takes him like half an hour to do that, and I was still pumping ammo into it. I must have wasted half my clip.
I found the GM, he wasn't particularly difficult, but the fact that he had his little embryo...
They're the worst part of it.
Oh, they're pissing off, weren't they?
Because you're starting to get an attack already or whatever, and then all of a sudden one of them latches to your leg, and you're like,
I find it amusing how in Scenario B, that boss fight is in what looks like an enormous underground cavern.
Yeah.
The gantry suspended on what looks like an abyss.
The H platform, isn't it? Yeah. So that leads us on to the factory. I have to suggest as an opening point, I don't quite know why you ever need to get the map. It does seem somewhat pointless. You've explored most of the area, and then as you get to the main shed, you get the map for a place. Certainly in Scenario A, you are not there for any longer.
I think it's more about the bigger picture. Like, if you see the map and you remember it, the next time you go through, you might be able to explore areas you didn't know, or like the other scenarios. I kind of maybe felt it was more that way. It is kind of quite a linear section.
Did everyone remember to pick up the weapon box key? Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, in A scenario, if you play with Claire, you don't have the lighter, so you'd have to sort of remember to go back and to get it.
No, you can still pick it up without the lighter. The lighter only shows you where it is.
Shows you where it is. You just click around the area, and there's actually a description for it too. Like, it's different. Like, there's something here or something like that.
No. I didn't even know that. There we go. So learn something new every day.
I do find it so surprising, though, once you've done the R.P.D, how close to the end of the game you are.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Because, the lab is very short if you know what you're doing, and the actual, journey between, the sewers and then the marshalling yard, they're only, small 10-minute segments at best. They're not long.
Yeah.
It is
It's
a
only really-
painfully
it's only
short
really-
game.
I was
I
gonna
don't know
say-
whether that's just because we have so much bloat in games now that playing something like that seems streamlined.
The simple fact, obviously, is that case. It's like they put a lot of forward thinking into the R.P.D. when they were redesigning it and rescheduling this game after restarting development, and then that whole bit is really built up really lengthy and wise, but then the back half kind of, especially the middle section, fast through. B scenarios are a little bit longer, and the labs is obviously a few extra areas, and the way you get access to the labs is differently, but it is much quicker than the front. Once you get to the sewers, it's all pretty much downhill. You're on the home straight.
It's lacking a guardhouse area, really.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
basically it. And a return to the R.P.D. essentially, like in the same sense of how you return to the mansion after the
It's a
guardhouse.
similar sort of building, adjoining building, yeah.
I was going to say, I was surprised how quickly, once you are at the labs, you're barely there. I remember it being a lot more thorough, but that was just clearly false. But
There's only really 2 floors to it, and a third in the B scenario. It's not very big.
Did any Claire players bother with the spark shot?
no,
I love it. It makes the Birkin boss on the train platform in scenario B really easy, and it takes about 15 shots, and it saves all your other ammo. For all your other guns. Dead easy fight with the spark shot.
is it?
That's why
Yeah.
I always use it for that.
There you go.
You can constantly change sides on the platform, and he never even gets near you because the spark shot really does stop him in his tracks. So you can get like 3 blasts of it off, then he'll jump onto the roof of the train car, so you just run round to the other side, he drops down, another 3 blasts, and you just get him into a rhythm. It's just really easy to repeat.
What I found quite interesting was when I got to the vacant factory, I suddenly thought, is this a different factory to the one I was in Resident Evil 0?
Oh, not this again.
And then I thought, no.
It's an error, guys. I know the number on the top of the shed is different, but it's an error.
I wanted to go see if I find the Sky Tram up to the management training facility. You've touched upon the Birkin fight going down the tram, and of course, in a scenario, certainly Clary, that is the first time you fight Birkin. And you're not just fighting him, you've missed out G1, you've missed out G2, you're fighting him in full Goro mode. And, at this point, you're like, he's tough. Now you've given us a little heads up with the spark shot, that may be a tip, but he killed me a few times. I had to change tactics as to how I was going to kill him, and note what his attack patterns were, because it'd been such a long time. Because he's very fast with his 4 mandibles.
I used the enhanced shotgun on him and
Yeah.
got the old smashing the camera angle screen, putting the bullet
Oh,
holes through the glass.
I'm more of a flame rounds type of person, but there you go. But I have to say, the Birkin's music. That was the first
Series best.
Bloody hell, that's awesome. This shit is on when that kicks up. Absolutely sensational.
Just going back a bit though, obviously before you take the turntable down, you get the iconic T103 appearance in the B scenario.
You do, yes.
It's amazing with the security camera.
Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant.
And again, I wasn't sure if you explored that part. I know you didn't have the camera angle or the time. I couldn't remember if you explored that part in Part A. So again, I was slightly disappointed that I was already going down the hatch, if you like, before that. But it's just my memory's poor when it comes to what scenario is what.
Again, it just comes down to the nice little links with the zapping system. Like, Claire and Sherry have already taken the tram car, so you have to recall it back when you play as Leon, and likewise the turntable's down and you have to get it back as Leon. Stuff like that was a big improvement compared to the original game, where it just treated it as if Jill and Chris were in sort of separate universes, really.
And miraculously, if I believe, it does also link up with below freezing point for where the turntable is. I think it does.
They take the train away in below freezing point.
Yeah,
Oh.
it could be automated and come back on its own. You don't know how far the train goes.
But that's the point, because they leave on it, so it's down, isn't it? When they get to the point, then they go up. So when they
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what's going on.
And they do retroactively hide the door you enter that in from 0 quite well.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So
It's interesting because when you do like a serious playthrough like John and I did a few years ago, that marshalling yard actually feels like a hub in itself, and it's quite incredible to play like a chronological run of the series, and like how many times you arrive at that location in Outbreak and 0 and then 2. It does feel like a kind of junction point in a sense.
one of the long-standing debates is about where Birkin's lab is, or where the marshalling yard is in relation to the rest of the town. The graphics through an HD TV don't help with that, apart from that bright bright moon. You can't really see, but Sherry mentions it's on the outskirts of town. I think if you look, you can see the mountain range in the background.
There's certainly no buildings.
There's certainly no buildings, no. So that was my impression. I just wondered if everyone else was kind of on the same page when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Good.
Part of it is that compression I was talking about before with the sewers seem relatively short for the distance that you actually travel in order for that to be so far out of town, but it is what it is.
You go on the tram, I suppose. That's the...
It gives you a bit of a mystery as to how far away it is, yeah.
Yeah. That brings us on quite nicely to the labs, Birkin's labs. Following on from your apocalyptic battle with William Birkin, you arrive promptly at the labs. In scenario A, you're carrying Sherry, who is feeling the effects of being impregnated by her father, and she needs to be attended to in the security office. Scenario B, what's going down?
The turntable stops, it has like a power drain and it stops halfway down. Ada's been injured by that point, so Leon goes out to try and get it working again, and he goes through the vent. So he's on an upper floor, and then the turntable starts up on its own and takes Ada all the way down.
And in Leon A, you are just putting Ada in the...
security office, yeah.
In the security office. Now, that's the calm before the storm. Certainly the security office, it's all... Nothing can get you there.
Claire? Oh, you're finally awake.
Isn't this...
That's okay. You keep it. I'm sure it'll keep you safe.
Thank you, Claire. Even though I'm an only child, neither of my parents ever spent much time with me because of their work. I grew up alone. But now that you're with me, I finally have someone to rely upon.
Sherry. Rest here for a bit. I'll be right back, as soon as I found the antidote for you.
As you go then into the main kind of hub area, clever me forgot that if you go back at some point, you are suddenly attacked by at least 6 naked zombies. And they are a bastard to kill. Absolute bastard. I remember them being particularly difficult in the first Resident Evil game, but they are just as bad in Resident Evil 2. And they have this nasty habit of doing a lunge at the last minute. And, oh, Jesus. Needless to say, they killed me, but thankfully I'd saved the security office, so it didn't set me back too much. But it's so frustrating, because, of course, you don't need to go back there once you've left Sherry. And presumably Ada, you don't need to go back there at all.
I had annoying experience with the Ivies because I hadn't played Resident Evil 2 for 5 years or something, so I'd booted up the B scenario that was saved, but I had no idea what I'd done in the A scenario. But it turns out I must have activated the P epsilon gas in the first scenario, which meant all the Ivies were poisonous in this one that I played through. And it's a bit of a cheat, really, because when you kill the zombies, they don't respawn, but when you kill the Ivies, they do respawn. Because I tried running past them and I got poisoned, and this was on my way to the final battle where Ada is quote-unquote killed by the T-103, and I got poisoned and I realised I had no security boxes because the only one was in the security room where Sherry was in, and it was locked and I couldn't get back to it. So I backtracked all the way to one of the researchers' dormitories where there was permanent blue herb in, killed the Ivies, got me blue herb, came back out again, and the Ivies had respawned and poisoned me again. I don't like the whole respawning thing, it just takes it away from the experience a little bit.
Does that only happen with the epsilon gas, though?
They're only poisonous if you switch the gas on, yeah.
No, I mean the respawning, because I dispatched a couple of them for mine, and I used the gas in the second playthrough to weaken them, in scenario B. I'd saved it.
Yeah.
And I killed a couple with flame rounds and they never came back.
Yeah, like fire.
Sure. Where they respawned, it was the west area corridor where the plant has taken over the dormitories.
Yeah, that was there. It was those are the ones I always get rid of in the corridor.
Yeah, I'd killed them, went back, used the blue herb, came back out, and they were both back there again.
Yeah, possibly. Does the P epsilon enhance the lickers in the scenario B as well?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. Although I did sort of realise there was a lot more than what I remembered. Enhanced lickers running around. But...
Yes.
Really great design. A couple of good jump scares with them bursting through the vents as well.
Yeah. Rob, did you find any interesting points about the labs before we get to specifics?
I feel like with playing through Leon A, it's a very straightforward run through the labs. It's a very straightforward. I think it's really the B scenarios that really starts to add the nuance and other kind of back end. Although with Claire, I feel like Claire A's got a lot more going on, obviously with the Sherry stuff. Whereas Leon's mission is very straightforward, and then there's just the situation with Ada at the end. And it goes very fast. It's like what we were talking about before. It's a very straightforward, fast scenario. There's not really a lot to it. I mean, there's a reasonable amount of liquors, and it's nice getting to see the lab where Birkin was shot, like getting to that part and going, okay, now I understand. And the moth area as well. I forgot about the moth. When I think about it, until the last boss fight, really, it's not exactly a memorable section of the game. It's all very bits are coming together storyline-wise, and there's a few files giving you a bit of background to the lab, but it's not anything that you didn't feel like you're already learning as you knew that there was a lab connected earlier on, because obviously the sewer sections start to talk about the connection between the city and the labs, so you're kind of waiting to get there.
What I did like was the fact that it contrasted quite well to the RE1 lab, which was very kind of run down, worn out, dank, whereas this was still very much a working lab.
Yeah.
And just love the sound design as well, the noise as you walk along, like, you know, the central kind of corridors, and that was really good.
You just popped a thought in my head. Much like we were talking about with the R.P.D. and its ability to be very difficult to get around, the labs kind of seem like that to me a bit too, because the main connecting elevator is out in the main entrance, yet they've got these stupid ladders everywhere, and nobody's going to climb. Oh, Billy, can you go grab that chemical blah 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 downstairs? Just climb down the ladder and bring it back up with you. Don't worry about dropping that vial and killing a bunch of people. It'll be fine. It is just pretty ridiculous.
And considering how big it is as well, there's hardly any rooms or labs or experiment areas. You know.
No, it's just Birkin's lab, isn't it?
Birkin's lab, and there's like one surgical room, and I think Outbreak helped in that respect. We'd add in a few extra floors with little laboratories and stuff in them.
Yeah. I was going to say, you can't even say, they could go about using the master elevator by the security room, because I think when you click on it, it says it's not been used for a long time. They can't even use that. And equally, it's slightly flawed, as you said, how to get to it when you've got this over-elaborate secret entrance. And yet Enrico Marini was able to find the master elevator and pop down it and go, all right. Which I always found baffling, but there we go. But yes, I think Below Freezing Point certainly helped, and having played Below Freezing Point sooner than I'd played Resident Evil 2, I'd forgotten about the frozen part in Resident Evil 2. And so I was like, it wasn't frozen, wasn't it? The last time I was there, it was frozen. Would have been nice to see the Hunter, any form of Hunter, either the 125 or, I know we get the X-File, don't we, in the N64.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, that's the thing that doesn't match up either, because the original version, it's not supposed to be a Hunter in there, it's all G research, so I think it's like the G arm and G items are supposed to be in those things.
That's right,
it's because of the N64 version with putting the Hunter in there, because obviously all the photos that you can get imply that it was all G research. Yeah, it doesn't quite agree, but then, so you don't get the Hunter, but then they added the Hunters back in because of the N64 version.
Yeah, absolutely. George, what are your overall feelings of the lab section?
Slightly bland, although I'm trying to think maybe how they could have been any better. I think, again, they kind of maybe lacked that just extra environmental interaction that we got with the descriptions in the R.P.D., you know, explaining things, and I might be wrong, but I don't feel we got as much as that. And there's actually, I think, really good opportunity for seeing, you know, the outbreak and panic that would have even been, you know, far worse in the labs. I mean, I suppose if the Ivy are kind of like the signature enemy that we get in that area, they were quite, you know, as compared to the Hunters, they were a big disappointment.
Compare them to the Crimea, I suppose, in Resident Evil 1.
Yeah, very much so, yeah. A big disappointment. They don't feel intimidating. They're not particularly frightening. And can we settle once and for all, does putting on the anti-BOW gas, the sprinkler, does that do anything?
Yeah.
We were just talking about this. So if you put it on the A scenario, then in the B scenario the plants become poisonous. But if you put it on in the B scenario, you weaken the plants because they get weaker before they technically make them. But we were also debating whether or not it impacts on the liquors, which I can't remember either. Maybe it is similar. Maybe they become. Do they ever get poisonous?
Well, they're green because I was playing Leon A, and my encounter with the liquors in the labs, and I put the sprinkler system on, which didn't seem to have any effect on the Ivy, but I come across the liquors, you know, they're green coloured.
Well, theoretically, it shouldn't have any effect on the lickers because the evolved lickers are weaponized versions of the original creatures, so I don't think the gas should have any effect.
Yes, just to talk of the lickers, because there's always been a bit of confusion about how early lickers appeared based on their appearance in the Outbreak and Hellfire scenario. I can't remember if there's a general consensus that those lickers are the same, because I think one of the operation reports shows the lickers are discovered quite early on in the Outbreak in Raccoon City, which does correspond with their appearance in Hellfire, which is dated on the 24th, I think, of September.
Yeah, it's just a design change. I think they're meant to be the same.
I'm pleased they went back to the Resident Evil 2 variants. The Outbreak ones just look strange.
Yeah. Okay, so character interactions in the lab is critical, and you get slightly different outcomes depending on who you're playing and what you're doing, all leading up to your big boss battle, whoever that will be with. So tell us what happens with Leon's.
Well, Leon's on his own for the majority of the lab. Basically, when you've done everything you need to do and you're going back up towards the furnace, you meet Annette, who is about to kill you, and then the T-103 drops between you, and you're forced to fight that. And at that point, I very nearly died because I was on red danger going into that fight. But luckily, the enhanced Magnum, 4 shots with that, took it down before it could get one hit on me. So luckily, I managed to survive that fight. And then from there, you go to the furnace, and obviously that's where Ada comes and rescues you from the tyrant, and it gets knocked into the lava.
Yes. In Claire A, we see the end of Annette being disemboweled by her husband, before giving you a handy guide as to how to prepare a G-virus sample. She just happens to have it on her. I like the fact that there's a G sample crushed next to her. I thought that was quite cool. We don't worry about that. You know, that could be potentially toxic, but whatever. We just see that purple vial.
It's the crazy fact that, Birkin was obviously shot and dying and injected himself with the G-virus, and Annette has just been gutted, but still is alive, and could have easily ended up doing a similar thing, but even by accident, potentially.
Yes, yeah. That's true. That's a good point.
I know if I'm confusing myself. In that cutscene with Birkin you were mentioning, and he injects himself, the upshot of that, don't you see his briefcase falls? And the vials that are smashed, and when Hunk's careful, you'll hit the sample.
Yeah.
Was there some debate in the past as to whether those were T-virus and G-virus, or whether they were just G-virus? Because then don't we see that?
It's both. There's clearly both in there.
Yeah, he ingests the G-virus and smashes the T-virus.
Smashes the T-virus, which is what helps increase the T-virus outbreak in the city. Because that's where they went on that basis of the scenario in Outbreak, where they said, the rats carried the virus because they ate the virus they smashed.
Because it would seem to make sense to me that you see the rats eating those vials, but I don't know, just in terms of what he's saying in the story at the time, it seems that really he'd only be carrying G-virus with him, surely.
No, I think it's because the lab does research based on everything, and he had samples with him of the other virus as well, just because.
Okay.
Because that T-virus strain is a new strain as well, because that's the strain that creates the lickers rather than the Crimson Heads.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, that T-virus sample obviously went to Sheena Island at some point as well, I would imagine. That became the common one, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyone have any problems with the moths?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, man.
I killed the one in the computer room just because.
Because I went into the computer room on Leon A, and I was really down on ammo. And I wasn't going to waste my last bullets on clearing the terminal, so I went all the way back to get the knife. And I ended up getting killed by the giant moth. That's the one thing I found frustrating in this game, is the knife does. You try killing a zombie with this knife, and it just takes forever.
You have to if you want the closet key.
I was going to ask, I couldn't remember because I did the fingerprint thing. For the life of me, I couldn't actually remember what you got if you then did it with Leon in scenario B. And is it the closet key?
What, the computer thing?
You got to get your fingerprint registered, don't you?
Yeah, it just gives you access to Birkin's lab. You get the second submachine gun magazine.
Submachine gun. It gives access to the thing upstairs with the machine gun.
Is that wasn't it?
Which is where your hunter is and your EX file in the N64 version. After you've put in the Nemesis password, not guessed.
Nice. That's good. That's cool.
Now the closet key, Nick, you got from not picking up any items on the way to the police station.
Police station, so you got there.
And
yeah.
You have to kill Brad Vickers, but you'll always run out of bullets because he's extra tough, so you have to use the knife to finish him off.
Oh, didn't know that.
And you get the closet key and another pistol for Claire, is it? You get the revolver, don't you?
Yeah, the 6-shooter.
Revolver, yeah.
And did Leon pick up the Magnums?
The what?
The Magnum.
Magnums. The Magnum ammo, yeah.
It's a mistake. It's just a typo.
It's a cheat weapon, that enhanced Magnum as well. It's so ridiculous.
It's cool, right? You can get like 4 zombie headshots with
Yeah.
one in a go.
I was going to say, actually, going back to that, I remember when it came out in 98 just being, like, floored by the amount of, like, deconstruction you could do on the enemies, like, with the enhanced weapons, like, especially the enhanced shotgun, and you would go aim for the head and you would take off, like, an arm, half the body, and the
Yeah.
So I was just going to say one last thing about the moths. I still, even now, just thinking about it, I just hate the sound of that moth. I just hate it.
Yeah.
Just the sound of it drives me crazy. But again, that's speaking well of the sound design, and it's going back to what we're talking about with the lickers and all that, and the dogs and everything. It's just that sound of them scuttering around and flapping their wings and stuff. Oh gosh, stuff of nightmares. Stuff of nightmares.
So we're building up to the big boss battles. We'll start with scenario A simply because B's got 2 and the better one, let's be honest. So we'll get the worst one out of the way. So Birkin G4, the kind of wolfman.
Bastard of a fight, that is.
Honestly, first I totally forgot that you still fight him as Goro for a bit. I know he only takes 3 shots or something. And then I thought, oh good, yeah, now he's mutating. I used to think that was really, really easy. Couldn't remember having problems, but bloody hell. If you are on caution, no chance.
He can one-shot you, I think, on caution, can't he?
Yeah.
He scoops you up.
Yeah, and he
He's like,
ravaged you.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. I thought, I was well equipped at this point. I had a grenade launcher. I was full with acid rounds, flame rounds. I even had a bit of the submachine gun left, so I thought, fine. Rest was just full of health. Thought, this is not going to be a problem. I'm good to go. I think it was the 6th time I finally killed him because of the relentlessness of his attacks, jumping down and then not being able to fire him, because he would just jump off the containers in the middle. And then as soon as you got down to caution, he would jump down and do that ravaging attack. And I was stumped for a while. I was going, this is just not working. I was getting really annoyed. But eventually he got cornered and he, for whatever reason, he couldn't escape. Probably a glitch in the game. And so I was able to fudge him off. But it was a lot more intense than I remember it being.
I mean, this is the thing, just running from corner to corner, taking a shot, running to corner, taking a shot is generally the easiest way to try and avoid that. I think people try to stand and line up a shot and wait for him to come too much, and it's really not the case. You've got to keep moving. It's really the only way to keep that going. It's kind of quite reminiscent, actually, when you think about it, of the Tyrant fight at the end of the first game, that you kind of get yourself to a position and make sure you're clear to take your shots, and then if he gets too close, you move away and do it again.
But I found
the enemy's much faster than the Tyrant.
Sure. But I also found it quite difficult because of the lack of kind of auto-aim, and the camera angles were not always helpful. But it's good. It's deserving of the end of the game, or at least so you think at that point in time. I enjoyed it. It was a good battle, leading to, obviously, Claire's or Leon's escape. Question, I think I've watched that video a few times. I still don't quite know how they made it on the train. I was trying to judge the speed of the train, the view of Claire or Leon, then looking to see, there's the gap. I don't think she makes it. Or if she did make it, she would be severely injured at the speed the train was going. She would have jumped on the gap and then been flown back into the train, causing huge amounts of pain for her. She wouldn't anyway, but then...
It's just a game, man. It's like when all those things in the movies. Well, if you jumped at that angle and, you wouldn't quite make it off that platform, you have to be like the fastest man possible.
Yeah. Anyway, A scenario is not particularly exciting because you kind of end the game at that point and, you go out with a blaze of glory. What you don't know is what's going on with B, which is far more exciting, with probably the best Tyrant in the series and the best music as well.
You'll like this because I played through the entire game without saving.
No!
I have some sort of OCD problem with Resident Evil 2 because it's not a particularly long game and it's one of the easiest ones. I never save it. I don't know why. And I always get caught every single time. I had loads of herbs, plenty of ammo, so I thought, right, I'll go and kill this bastard. And
that sounded so northern then.
Kill this bastard.
Ada dropped the rocket launcher, so everything was going great, and then somehow I missed with both shots.
Oh my god.
I've never done that before. That's why I was chuckling to myself when you were talking about auto-aim before, because I obviously didn't have it, and I missed with both shots. So I had like 4 minutes left on the countdown and about 50 enhanced Magnum guns that I banged into him, and obviously that was never going to work, so eventually he just wore down all my health and gutted me.
Oh, brutal.
End of game.
You didn't go back and start it again after that, though?
No,
thought,
I destroyed my console, pretty much.
Oh man!
It's a harder fight as Leon as well, because am I right in thinking Leon's run speed is slightly slower than Claire's? Just a fraction.
I don't know.
Struggle with it as Leon and I never get hit as Claire.
Part of it's the setup of that angles in that scenario, like that layout is again supposed to be reminiscent of the helipad battle in the first game, obviously. But I just feel like the angles are very ruthless. For like he just slashes in, slides in, and it's quite unforgiving.
It's a great fight though, the music and the build-up.
Oh, that music is just epic.
And I'd also like to congratulate Capcom on doing it, and it's still a beautiful scene when he comes out of the lava, the molten pit, whatever it is, and it's not done in a kind of FMV cutscene. It still looks brilliant in the kind of in-game video, and that's a compliment even after all these years, that it still looks and has that epic feel, even though it's horrendously pixelated. It just does not matter.
Do you appreciate the subtlety of it versus the massive smelting plant that they have in Darkside?
Yes.
Where they're leaping between platforms and everything.
I think I've erased that from my mind.
Well, it's a good thing, Nick, that there's a remake just around the corner to remind you.
Yes.
In fact, it's a shame, really, that the Tyrant fight is so good that it kind of makes the bolted-on ending with Birkin kind of underwhelming. Because if you've saved a rocket and some machine gun ammo, you just fire one rocket and just fire the machine gun till it dies. Game ends.
Yes, yeah. Birkin G5 has never been particularly difficult, because you can't miss him. I do wonder why they saved that for B scenario, and why we couldn't have had it in A scenario.
I suppose because it's the true end of the game, isn't it?
It's the true end of exactly, the finality of, because you want that belief that they got away on the train, which I think is a clever little switch. It's a nice little last minute twist, because the cutscene starts the same way, and you think, okay, cool, it's going to wrap up, and you're going to see the rest of the cutscene, and it's going to continue, and then all of a sudden it does continue, but it's like, oh, actually no, there's another fight for you. And
no, I mean,
especially back in that as we were talking about, in those pre-magazine, pre-internet days, as it was, finding out there was a second scenario, and then finding that, like, you think, oh, well, you've had this big boss battle and with both of them, and you think, yep, they're both gone now, because obviously the other scenario I'd beaten Birkin, and in this one I've got the Tyrant, so sweet, cool, defeated, done, and then no.
No, still one more. I enjoyed the interactions between Leon and Claire on the train, even if Leon was a bit over the top, I think, with, she's not waking up.
He changes his mind instantly, because he like comes along and says, oh, it's over, and then Claire goes, no, we have to find my brother, and he's like, you're right, this is
I think he more means in the sense that it's over currently, the events that they've just gone through, oh my god, thank god that's over, and then she's like, no, it's not, and then he's actually like, oh yeah, you're kind of right, there's a bigger picture here going on that I'm not really thinking about.
Claire's final line in her B scenario is a better lead into Code Veronica as well than Leon's generic take out Umbrella line.
I had this disagreement, I don't know if you guys saw it on Biohaze, there was that thread about the best and worst of the series. I made that comment that we've talked about how having a consistent bad guy has been an issue in recent years, and the detriment about having it, but I said it wasn't any better than the fact that Capcom couldn't decide how they were to approach the fact that they made an evil corporation and how that had to be figureheaded, and they'd thought about it in the early days, having like Spencer and all that sort of stuff, but they'd never really put it into any action. So these endings where it's like, we have to take that umbrella, just continue to be falsity. It's not going anywhere because there was nowhere to direct that energy at, and so it wasn't surprising when the resolve of Resident Evil 4's opening was just basically go, and Umbrella doesn't exist anymore. There was nowhere to take it at that point.
The difference being is that it's still one global company of Umbrella, and yet it's all Takedown Umbrella, and you're kind of seeing different facets of it, whether that be Vincent on Sheena or Birkin or the Ashfords. It didn't matter because it was still under the Umbrella guise. And in Resident Evil 2, of course, you got other names like Charles Coleman and God knows what, all these people that aren't on screen that are still behind the scenes.
That's the absurdity of it, because the thing is, as I was saying before, the game does a really great job of making you realize how big Umbrella actually is and how much power it wields. So to turn around and immediately say, you've got to take down Umbrella, well, it's such an obvious point, but at the same time, there's so many facets to that how are you going to achieve that? It's not like it's a direct goal. It's not like, oh well, if I do this one thing, that'll take down everything. It'll have a domino effect. No, it's obviously not the case. Whereas obviously a connection point to Claire finding her brother is a much more obvious goal. Like, it's a path. And that's why you were saying it's a better ending, because it's a much more direct response.
Just as a question to you, Rob, because you would have been at the forefront of the lore back then. It seems obvious now, of course, but at the end of Resident Evil 2, nothing's really been destroyed apart from Birkin's lab, which is on the outskirts. Was there a lot of discussion afterwards going, there's still quite a lot of zombies roaming around Raccoon City.
Yeah, because the idea was that obviously what happens in 3 with the city being bombed, but everyone was like, well, obviously there's got to be cleanup squads, or there's got to be others. And the other idea that people were saying at the time was that there's got to be other survivors' stories, which again, they eventually went down that path with Outbreak in a way. And so there was that discussion. But then, I mean, like we were talking about, the minute details people get. I mean, for ages, it was to everyone, it seemed so, well, for a lot of people, it seemed so obvious that the person who throws you the rocket launcher at the end of the scenario is Ada.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward question that didn't seem like it was much of a question. They tried to make it mysterious, but it's pretty obvious it's her character model and her voice. Yet people were debating it endlessly. Like, it was one of those stupid things that should never have needed to be debated for hours. But I remember for months and months and months, so even after Resident Evil 3 came out, people were still going on about it. And they would find all these little things throughout the game that people would just spend their time nitpicking and debating, and then they would miss the bigger picture. And so there would be some people talking about this thing about, like, well, what does it mean for the city, and still zombies and creatures of the city, like, just because they've escaped? How do we not know? I mean, if there's a Birkin and a Tyrant, it just so happens that that's what Leon and Claire have run across, but who knows what else is in there. And obviously also the idea that obviously the Mr. X unit got dropped off and you saw several canisters, so people talked about the concept behind that. They're like, well, if they drop one off there, then I'm guessing they must be dropping other ones off in the city. So what happens with those? It was a pain in the ass to kill one of them. Like, dear God, there's several others, you know? Like, there was a lot of discussion about those things. But that was really great. I really want to say this, and people are going to bulk at it, but I want to say post-Resident Evil 2, probably up until Code Veronica, was probably the biggest engagement Capcom had with the fans as far as people being invested in the series, because the second game was such a smash hit. First game had done so well, but the second one, just the conversation and domination of how it was, combined with the timing and where we were as far as the internet was, like in the earlier days of the internet, it just was that right time to be having those sorts of discussions, and it lasted for a few years.
Do you remember the excitement of, like, the fact that the series was branching, like, simultaneously? So you had, like, Resident Evil 3 coming out, which was exploring Jill's story. You had Code Veronica exploring Claire and Chris's, and it was a really great time.
Well, it wasn't just that. We had Survivor coming, and there was another story going on there. At the time, we knew Zero was in development because they'd announced that was going to happen, and Resident Evil 2 was being ported to the N64. So we had a backstory that was going to flesh out a bit more of Umbrella. That was the intent. So there was a lot of buzz for a good time, probably from Resident Evil 2 right through to early 2000. And then after Code Veronica came out, everyone was still kind of excited, but then the development problems happened with 4, and things kind of slowed down, and it was a fits and starts kind of thing. There was a lull there for a few years until the remakes of 4 came out, and then it was revigorized for a while and then died off. But it's never quite reached that same peak of discussion that kind of happened post Resident Evil 2 and then right up to Code Veronica through 3 and everything, where it seemed like anything was possible. Yeah, it's interesting replaying it now. I'm not really thinking about it in those terms, but it's a very valid point. It just seemed like it opened a much bigger picture than we had really established. Like, it was very easy to say, well, the first game was very much self-contained and the bad guys were bad guys, but you didn't know the extent of beyond what they were doing outside of the mansion, and you had an understanding. Obviously they had a certain level of pull and control in Raccoon City from, like, newspaper clippings and so forth, but Resident Evil 2 really started to flesh that out, and then the scenarios themselves added to the idea. Like I was talking about with the Mr. X units, like, there is other potentials for other stories or other stuff going on in the city, which Resident Evil 3 did take on board, but at the same time definitely gave fidelity to, because it decided to turn the city into a giant crater. So,
well, you've got to remember, of course, in Resident Evil 2, you're actually seeing an active Umbrella with the deployment of Tyrant, whereas in Resident Evil 1, it's just old stuff that's all kind of that's been left there. You know, that Tyrant has been in suspended animation almost since what we subsequently find out since like 1991 or whatnot. So it's, you know, it's just old stuff, and you know, the way you explore it is all very dank and grey and dreary, and, you know, perhaps this is just something they're doing. But in Resident Evil 2, you see them purposely deploy these, these Tyrant.
They seem to hunk in his...
And hunk, yeah. This Umbrella's got an armed response unit. Okay, you know, and...
it's a military squad that's, you know, they've obviously got, you know, that's part of it as well. The whole tipped off about what Birkin was planning on doing, you know, and so they go in to try and rectify the situation, which creates a bigger situation, obviously, at the time, but... Yeah, those are all little story beats that build up the scale of Umbrella and its operations and its manipulations, and everyone was very enthused, you know, about the world had just opened up so massively, so fast.
Perfect sequel.
It really is. It still feels indebted to the original game. It still feels connected to the original game, but it's its own thing as well. Like, the great thing you could say about it is you could play the second game and not have played the first, and it doesn't really change things. You get enough of a story beat in the opening to tell you this is what happened in the first game, plus the dialogue about them not being listened to and the little hints you can get looking around the STARS office. And the only other thing you need to know is that Claire and Chris are related. That's it. That's literally it. Everything else is self-contained.
That was my experience. I played RE2 first, and that was the genius of not using the original cast. You have this brand new cast, and so you're not alienated. But I just remember just being very intrigued about playing the first game, obviously because this was a sequel. But other than that, it didn't take any enjoyment away from the game at all.
Right. With that in mind, going back to a kind of original point then, how has this game aged? Has everyone enjoyed it? And where does it score in their kind of, what score would you give it now? Is the nostalgia goggles quite strong on this, or does it still stand up on its own 2 feet? Try to avoid comparisons to impending Remake 2. As Batman, what's your kind of overall views then, and where it stands?
I still really enjoy it. I really enjoyed this playthrough. Like I said before, I've not played it for a few years. I still like the old camera angles and that, but it does feel a bit dated now. I think I've recently said Resident Evil 7 has probably eclipsed Resident Evil 2 in my personal top 3. And after this playthrough, even though I really enjoyed it, I still think I like 7 just that little bit more. However, I'd still say it's a 10 out of 10 game for me. I've always loved it. Up until the last few years, I've tried to play it semi-regularly. The story still holds up. The graphics are terrible now. And that's the only way I would ever sort of justify why we need a remake, but I just wish there was something they could do with the original assets. I know they've lost them, I know they don't have the high-res versions of the backgrounds anymore, but if they could have done anything with it, I would have liked this particular version of the game just touched up somehow. But I'd still give it a 10 out of 10. It's still, like Romby said, it's pretty much the perfect sequel.
Starstone?
I think all that, although I actually still think the visuals hold up if you play something like a Dreamcast version or something. I know the backgrounds are lower resolution compared to others in the series, but they don't bother me. I enjoy it still to this day. I think the game itself, I absolutely loved it. To me, it's not dated, but then I don't have a problem playing retro games, and I know people of today would probably think it looks like 1 pixels on the screen at a time, but to me, it represented a turning point in the industry of narrative-based gaming, and without it, and things like Metal Gear Solid, like we discussed earlier, without games like Resident Evil 2, the gaming industry could possibly be a different place. Kamiya really was a visionary with the things he did there. I think it's a bit of a shame that people like him aren't celebrated more in the series like they do Mikami. I think the game, for me personally, and this is why I'm totally anti-remake, the game is a timeless masterpiece, and it honestly breaks my heart, and I'm not going to get into a rant or anything like that, but it just breaks my heart that so many people want to see a remake, because I hate using this cliche because it's used far too much now, but the game is a lightning in a bottle for me. It really is.
Awesome. A score?
And it's such an easy, effortless 10.
Cool. George Trevor?
Yeah, I like what Star says. It is a timeless masterpiece, but I still, for me, for the first time with these playthroughs, I would like to see not a remake, but just some sort of remaster. I don't know why they couldn't literally recreate it if they wanted to from base up, just to how it played on the PC, or just with that slightly more retro look. The actual mechanics of the gameplay, the fixed camera angles, I don't get tired by. I just get frustrated by the clunky controls, the lack of the 180 spin. RE3 is fine for me as kind of a base level of graphics, but RE2, it is too rough around the edges. I'd like to see those backgrounds, because they're wonderful. They're so detailed. If you look at some of the outside areas in the distance, like the hills, and when you see some of the facilities from afar, I was stopping and actually looking, and even on the streets, the buildings that are in the background and the foreground. But it did feel a little dated for the first time for me, and so for that reason I'd like to see a remaster, not a remake. So if I was giving it a review for these playthroughs, it's still a masterful game, but I would give it 8 out of 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Romby?
I'm on a similar page as everyone. I mean, I kind of get the idea of a lightning in a bottle, because I think, as I said before, a lot of it is the right thing at the right time, and that goes also into the way that it was appreciated with the fans and the way it's sold, and it's hard to quantify. As far as playing it now, I have those little niggles. I mean, playing on the Vita was pretty good, as we've talked about before. It's very clean and pops on the screen, because it's only a certain level of screen real estate. The controls are the controls. I mean, yeah, not having a 180 turn is an issue, but at the same time, it was what it was at the time, and I'm kind of okay with that. The story is, and the characters and the world building is where it really holds up for me, and it is, as I said before, it is a really amazing sequel to take something that was so beloved and actually improve upon it in almost every fashion, and still not lose what made the original game so different and important as well, which is not an easy ask. It's not an easy ask of any game or any sequel of anything, books, movies, whatever. The fact that it continued to propel the series, I mean, it was a game series as well that if the original had sold not so great, it would have been a one and done deal, and then it sold really well, so they made a sequel. But that sequel, and the whole purpose of why they scrapped 1.5 is because they were like, if we made this game, we would have released it, and that would have been it. The chances of making another one after that probably would have been almost non-existent. So even the process of the development behind it tells its own truth. The fact that it turned out so amazingly, given the turmoil of production, is also a testament to how much work was put into it and what was thought about it and how it goes. As far as score goes, I'm still going to give it a 10 out of 10 for the same reason. It's just as great to revisit it now as it was. Not everything holds up because things do age. But as a playable experience, as a craft, as a story, and then keeping in mind its limitations of its time, it's just that good.
Good stuff. From my point of view, as I mentioned earlier, I did it in slightly different order by playing 1, 3, then 2. So it's never been quite in the same league, in my opinion. I think, as I've said earlier, it's always been slightly lower on my overall games. So I approached it with a degree of trepidation. We've mentioned about the controls and indeed for what they are, and it did make it a bit clunky. But once I was at the R.P.D., I was in and totally absorbed into the Resident Evil world all over again. And I was experiencing Resident Evil as I remember. Even though I know the game pretty well, I was still having jump moments. I was still having that kind of feeling of not wanting to carry on, that annoyance of dying and then starting again from a save point as opposed to a retry just from the door that you've just entered. And, that's why we love Resident Evil 7, because it kind of invoked those feelings, and it was wonderful to go back. And I have had a thoroughly enjoyable time, more so than I think when I originally played it for the first time, because I was happy with the controls eventually, and the graphics just didn't bother me. I wouldn't ever recommend playing on PlayStation 3. Play it on PlayStation 2 for that slightly lower resolution but better lighting. And as a result, I can't remember what score I actually gave it originally, but I found the whole process to be a joy. And I think as you get older, I found that I enjoyed the characterization and the world building and the files in particular so much more rewarding than I used to. And I can't recommend it enough. And unlike the first game, which even by year 2000, it was creeping on needing a remake, because it was too bright. The original game, it was too bright. It didn't quite have the scare factor as much as it ought to have done. And you could see where the game series was going. I don't think this needs a remake. I don't think it's crying out for a remake. And I would support what George says about a remaster. I would give it a 9.5 out of 10. Anyway, with that does conclude the discussion on Resident Evil 2 replay mode. I hope you've enjoyed it. But we now move on to this podcast edition of Neptune's Biohazard Quiz.
New season. New questions. New answers. And probably new foes. Welcome to Neptune's Biohazard Quiz. Batman. Star Tyrant. George Trevor. Robbie McGregor. Mr. Spencer. Neptune Biohazard Quiz.
So welcome, we have a Resident Evil 2 themed quiz. relatively easy, I think. I'm expecting high scores from everyone. So if everyone can clear their desktops, you can open up Notepad. Let's crack on. Question number 1. 1 point available, but potentially half marks. What is the number of the bus you enter in Resident Evil 2, and where is it going?
Fucking hell.
Easy.
That's a veto question.
No. The bus at the beginning.
Ooh, actually, I might have a based on something else I just remembered, if I'm remembering this correctly.
It's not a fair question for us B scenario players.
Touche. Okay, question number 2. According to the file, who is the Vice President of USA Umbrella?
Okay, no.
Question number 3. Which of the R.P.D. precinct keys only opens one room? Got a 1 in 4 chance there. Question number 4. What was the name of the gas station in the opening FMV? Depending on how close people get, there may be some points available for that one. And finally, question number 5. What creatures greet you when you crawl through the ventilation duct in Birkin's lab? Apologies, this is part A again. I want specifics. Okay, so that concludes our questions. Join us after this when we'll run through the answers. So welcome back. Let's see how everyone's done. So question number 1 was, what is the name of the bus you entered in Resident Evil 2, and where was it going? George, we'll start with you.
That was a veto question. I've got no idea. Is that the one where you get on it and there's like a crawling zombie and then there's a guy? And I think I read somewhere that in a beta version or something, Dario Wasso's diary was meant to be in that briefcase, or something was meant to be in that briefcase. No, I've got no idea.
Any guesses of numbers? You can have a number guess.
249.
Okay, Batman?
No idea. Number 70, and it's going downtown.
When you're alone. I won't sing. Romby?
I can't remember either. I was going to say downtown or uptown. I was like 50-50. I was just going downtown, and numbers, no clue. I had this thought in my head that there was a Speed reference, that they'd used the same number of the bus from Speed, but I don't think that's accurate at all.
It might be, I don't know.
It's the same type of bus from Speed, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I was thinking about it, because I was like, it's the same type. I think that's what they modelled it off.
Okay, well, I actually remember the bus name from the number from Speed. I believe it's 5555, isn't it?
I don't know.
It's going to Stoneville.
Oh. Well, the bus number was 33. Sadly, so no points there. And everyone was toying between uptown or downtown. It was midtown. So...
Fuck.
No point, I'm afraid, there. But there we go. So, I think we should...
I just looked it up. The bus and Speed, the number is 2525. However, the route number is 33, and it's going to downtown. I knew it had something to do with it. Damn it! I wish I could have remembered that number. It would have been great.
Anyway, so question number 2, I think we'll get some points here. Who is the Vice President of USA Umbrella? Romby?
No idea. I'm terrible with names. I could have done anything.
Okay, George Trevor, did you know this one?
No, and I couldn't even remember the file.
Okay, I think Batman will probably know. Stars Tyrant, did you know?
I do not know. It's a blank, I'm afraid.
Oh, dear. Batman put him out of the misery?
Joel Alman.
Is the correct answer. Mm-hmm. Yes, well, good, very good. We never know what happens to him. Who knows? But there we go. Question number 3. Which was the only precinct door key that opened only one room?
I think I know this.
Oh, for confidence. Go for it.
I was just playing that. Is it the heart key near where Bats was mentioning you get the valve handle in the back office? You know, just out there, there's a door on the left. Yeah, the heart key.
Okay. Star Tyrant?
I had heart key, and it is that door I was thinking of. So you get to the
Batman?
basement.
I said heart key, but I thought it was the door to the file archive room
Okay.
in the B scenario.
Romby?
I had heart key as well. I think it was just the back door leading downstairs.
Yes, so points for all is the heart key. Well done, well done. It's the back door. But that wasn't part of the question, but yeah, that's right. Very good. Points all around there. Question number 4, what was the name of the gas station in the opening FMV? It's quite tricky, Romby.
Nah, I haven't got it. I was trying to think. I know the logo, but the name can't remember.
Oh, fuck. No, because I've been sitting here really smug. I know it, but then I just realised I'm thinking of the thing that blew up in RE3, Stagler. That's... Oh, shit.
The reason why I know the logo is I know it's a likeness for
yeah.
another brand.
Yeah.
And this is the thing I know, and I can't remember how it's worded. It's a take on a brand, and if I say it, you guys might get it, so I'm not going to say it. Because if I say what the actual company is, then it'll probably tip it off and someone will remember, so I'm not going to say anything.
Shall I go next, because I'm guessing?
Okay, that's very noble of you, George. Go on then.
Well, because I was thinking, like, Texaco or something. I'm sure... Yeah. But Texaco's real, isn't it?
Texaco's real,
yeah.
But
Trust your car to service with a star.
And I'm sure it begins with T as well, though. It's like almost a misspelling of Texaco. I'm normally really bad at these, but I've studied that cutscene. Is it... Because there's an X in it as well. I'm going to say Texaco.
Okay. Star's turn.
I see, I thought haven't they just swapped the C with the G, so it's Texaco. So it's literally Texaco, but with a G instead of a C.
Okay. Batman?
I think it's Tax-A-Go.
Oh, you fucking what?
Oh, yeah, that was a guess, then I said.
Points to Batman.
Hey.
It's Texaco.
Isn't that what I said? What did I say?
No, that's why I had to be careful. You said Texaco.
He said Taxaco.
That's what, yeah.
Texaco.
Yeah.
Texaco, but it's Texago.
It's a combination of both mine and yours, George.
Okay. Bloody hell.
God damn it! See, I knew it was. I started this whole thing off. I was like, I knew it was like Texaco, but like I couldn't remember what order it was, and I was like, I'm just gonna say it, and then everyone's gonna have all these variations. I should have just said it anyway.
And finally, question number 5. What creatures greet you when you crawl through the ventilation duct in Birkin's lab? Batman, we'll start with you for this one.
Hang on, which ventilation duct are you talking about?
The one after where you put the gas.
I believe it's 2 evolved liquors.
Okay. George?
Yeah, I was a bit confused what you meant. Is this the one when you light the fuel and then in order to be able to burn the plant? Well, yeah, it's the two greenish coloured liquors are in there.
Okay, Star's turn.
2 enhanced liquors.
Rob?
Same thing. 2 liquors enhanced.
Ooh, you're lucky you got that last word in there, because I wanted very specific. It is the enhanced liquors.
It's always very memorable, because if you've got the super shotgun, you can kill them both in like 2 blasts.
Oh, can you? Oh, there we go.
One shot takes out both of them.
Yes, I was trying to catch people up by saying liquors, but I wouldn't have allowed that. You nearly fell to my trap there, Romby. Let's have a look at the final score. Some points on the board for everyone. This week's winner is Batman with 3 out of 5. Second place, joint second for everyone else with George, Stars, and Romby, all with 2 points apiece. So, well done. That does conclude this edition of Neptune's Biohazard Quiz. Join us next time when we'll have some more questions. There we go. Thanks very much for playing, chaps. It was always a pleasure. Some good questions there, I felt.
Yeah, the good quiz questions.
Not too bad. When we will return, when will that be, we do not know. The fact that we've been away for a while, and in that time there has been no news, Resident Evil news is scarce on the ground. I suspect we may see something at E3.
Can I just ask, does anyone notice that there's the Twitter account? It's the Capcom R&D development. And that recently tweeted out that there was some RE2 remake news coming after such a long delay, that there was something coming.
I thought it was more vague than that. I didn't think it was RE2 remake, and I did see that.
Oh, was it a big announcement? Oh, so
it was just like they were hinting at something coming, and it was the dev team 1.
That's it, you're right.
So whether or not, I think just people reading into what that could potentially be. It's obviously something, and they're always working on something.
Yeah.
So that was the one that caused all the kerfuffle in January when it looked like they were going to announce something, and there was a picture with a typewriter and a finger, and then nothing happened. And they were like, "Oh, sorry, we were just goofing around." It was the same.
So we still got a number of discussions. We're going to be doing a podcast at some point on the voice of Gaia and or the experience, depending on how that goes. Whether there's enough to talk about. My initial information leads me to believe there's not a lot to talk about with the voice of Gaia. I still need to get through the next 45 minutes of that. But we will keep you posted, because I think these replay throughs, if you like, has been quite popular. We may do that with other games as well. So with that in tow, we'll keep you posted, and thank you very much for listening. And it's goodbye from me, Neptune.
Goodbye from me, Batman.
Goodbye from me, Stars Tyrant.
Goodbye from me, George Trevor.
Goodbye from me, Robbie.
Hey, it's up to us to take out Umbrella.